58, 59. Lost count. Eight, 59. Lost count.
Battle Axe Theater. That's a good name.
Battle Axes. Battle Axe, man. He brought the preach video.
Battle Axe Theater.
Depth from Battle Axe. I don't know if you guys have seen, he just rants, and it's awesome. And he just starts screaming and yelling. I need to have a beer with that guy.
What is up, everybody? How is everybody doing this fine Monday? Wouldn't be a Battle Axe stream if we didn't have some technical difficulties. So if you didn't hear the warning, it's the same gist. There's going to be some vaping. There's going to be a little bit of beer drinking and lots
Cursing.
of choice words. So if you're offended by that and you're not an adult, well, you shouldn't be here. And if you are an adult, just stick around and deal with it because we got a very special guest today. So I'm Punk Shoe. I'm here with my boy Def.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out, and really excited for this one. We're gonna get our guest to spill every bit of information there is to know about Saga of Lucimia.
So if you guys aren't aware, this is our very special guest, T-Dubs Anderson.
T-Dubs.
It's Tim Anderson.
TW.
He is the author of Saga of Lucimia and creative director and man of many hats over at Stormhaven Studios. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about what they've been up to the last year. If you guys weren't aware, we had him on almost a year ago. And
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it was like April or May of last year, I think.
Wow.
Something
All
like
right.
that.
In a minute.
So we are going into a new alpha phase. The pre-order store has been reopened. If at any point during this broadcast, if you guys are interested and you see something or you hear something that really strikes a nerve and you want to get on that train, you want to support Saga, there's a link in the description. And be sure to check out Saga of Lucimia after the stream at sagaoflucimia.com, where you can find out more information about the game. Anyway, welcome to Battle Axe Live, Ren.
I was happy to be here.
So I know that you've got other ways of people to follow you and contact you. Do you mind letting people know where else they can find you out there in the creative
Me
space?
personally, or all the Saga stuff? Because
everything you want to give out.
Sure. So all the Saga Lucimia stuff, it's going to have the Saga Lucimia handle. So Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I think those are the 4 that we're on. So you can go there and find out everything you know. Instagram is probably the least frequently used because we only do like screenshots there or little video snippets. Facebook we use pretty regularly, Twitter regularly, and YouTube, now that we're coming out of the dark of stage 2 and we're doing all this prep for stage 3, we've been very active on YouTube basically since the beginning of mid part of February. So about the last month we've been really active on YouTube. There's the topic of the week videos, and then also the obviously the live streams we've been doing for the previews of stage 3. And then just myself, I really, I do the Mondays and MMORPGs shows on my personal YouTube channel, and then I have a Twitter and a Facebook. But really my personal stuff, it's like, if you want to follow me, great. I use them very infrequently.
You should follow him.
Yeah, I mean, it's great if you want to. I think Twitter is Renfail SOL because I couldn't get Renfail. Somebody has an inactive account from like 10 years ago, and customer support staff will not give it to me. I've asked twice. Otherwise, you can find me on the YouTube. Links are somewhere. You'll find them.
Yeah, we'll get the links to the YouTube and the to both his YouTube and the Saga of Lucimia YouTube added to the description here.
Most important ones are the Saga of Lucimia ones. So
yeah, that's what this is about. This ain't about Tim. This is about
funny.
Saga.
I was scrolling through Instagram today and I saw a little snippet of Saga's stream from Wednesday. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, because I think technically I've got an ad running for something, and that may be what you saw.
Yeah, I think it came up as a sponsor, so I just thought that was pretty cool.
No, I've got a Facebook ad running, so it's paying both Instagram and Facebook right now.
Oh, okay, that explains a lot, because I was like,
that's pretty
Saga
sick.
has an Instagram? Okay, cool.
We do. We don't have a lot of followers on it, but mostly we just share out the screenshots every once in a while. It's like I said, it's the most infrequently used, but we are on there.
Well, you got to start taking some Renfail selfies. And yeah. And then
green screen
on the Instagram game.
And then you got to get on that Twitter and poo stories. I hear that's like the really big hit over there.
I got to get my what's that website that I can get where I could sell all my own private photos? I forget the name of the website now. Somebody was joking about it. No, there's a different one. It's not Patreon. Like all the cam girls use it, and I can't remember what it's called now.
I have no idea what any of that stuff is.
One more question before we move on. Does Saga have a TikTok?
No, and we're not going to. I'm not going. I'm not diving that deep into the.
Come on, I want to see you doing like dance
pool.
moves and stuff.
Jeez.
I want to see like a D&D rap song.
Yeah, I've got enough time on my hand with this quarantine stuff that I probably could. So
there you go.
Don't tempt me.
I just want to give a shout out to everybody in chat. Welcome to the stream. I see we got a lot of familiar faces here. We also have a lot of new faces. We've got some people that I'm glad to have here. We've got Eloa here, and we've got our personal friends. We got BDB in chat. We got old Taco. Chobo, good to see you again. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move things along. We're going to continue with our normal segments because Ren has been super cool and decided to be a team player with us, and I think it'd be really nice to kind of have some fun with this. So this is our weekend review. It's the weekend review. Woo, doggy. All right, so the weekend review is a segment. Whoops, that was my elbow. That was my funny bone. It wasn't funny.
It was for me.
This is a segment where we talk about what we did for the last week, because we are a Monday stream, not an end of the week stream or the beginning of the week stream. So we're gonna talk about what we did last week. So typically we start off with Def telling us what he did, but I'm gonna put Ren on the spot. Tell us about what you did this last week during quarantine.
So I've actually been unquarantined since the beginning of the month, more or less. I have friends who live in Milan, so I've been kind of front and center with what's going down over there for the past couple of months. So once I saw shit getting really hairy over there, as well as what was going on, we've done a lot of stuff in Spain and Italy over the years, so we have a lot of contacts over there as well in Spain.
Okay.
And so when I saw what was happening in China was spreading to there, I immediately just said, you know what? I quit going to the gym at the beginning of the month, way before they started implementing lockdowns and everything here. It's mostly business as usual because because I work from home, my life is pretty much here in front of this PC. My wife and I, we do go out every day for walks. That's out of the question now. The gym every day, that's gone for the moment. So we do have a lot more home time. So I've been spending that. Obviously, this past week in particular, it's been a lot of. I've been doing a lot of preview streams for Saga on our Twitch channel, coming out of the dark of NDA for the last year, and just doing all the promotion for that. Also doing a lot of just work on. We've got a lot more what we're just calling set dressing and kind of polish to add to Stage 3 between now and April 3rd. So we've been, I've been writing new dialogues for new NPCs and new quest lines and testing all the quest lines. So John and I in particular, we probably do 2 to 3 hours of Q&A every single day at minimum, on top of everything else. And then the PS4 has been getting a lot of workouts lately. So I'm redoing God of War right now, which is an amazing game. And I've got Final Fantasy VII Remake on pre-order. I'm waiting for Last of Us 2, waiting for Cyberpunk 2077, but those are a ways out still. And I'm unfortunately not playing World of Warcraft Classic anymore because for the past month I've just been way too busy with Saga stuff to worry about it. So, but mostly this past week's just been Saga work, and in the mornings I do a little bit of PS4, and then my wife and I, she's on online classes only right now for her school, so we've been doing a few hours of Netflix a day that we would otherwise spend like going out walking to the park and stuff, because we have a really big park by our house that unfortunately we can't go to right now. So
are you guys on like official government quarantine, or is it just self-quarantine?
So yeah, that's an interesting topic. This administration here, the federal administration, is not taking it very seriously, but thankfully the local administration is.
Okay.
So for example, my gym, the gym that I go to, the chain shut down on the 18th nationwide. And on the local level. So for those who don't know, just as an FYI, I live in, most of the time I spend in Mexico City, and then I go up to Austin as needed, and also to Minneapolis and stuff. But so here in Mexico City, I think we went into phase 2 yesterday. So phase 2 is they've shut down all the cinemas, restaurants, cafes, gyms, everything, museums. They're all shut down as of I think yesterday. So the local government's taking it seriously, even if the federal government's not, which I take it is the exact same thing that's happening in the United States as well. So
yeah, I think it's like you said, it's more of a local government. Like it's coming down from the governing bodies of the actual states rather than on a federal level. I mean, there have been like concerns voiced, but there's not been any official legislation that I'm aware of. But I know that like our governor up here in Arkansas was like, anything non-essential, you're not supposed to be open. They're not going as far as sending police around like they are in some states, but I live outside of Little Rock, and Little Rock is on they're on a what do you call it? A curfew. So from midnight till 5 a.m., nobody is allowed to be outdoors, which it seems kind of like a pointless curfew. But I would imagine, certain people out at certain hours of the night might be a certain demographic or something. I don't know what the reasoning is, but it's there. So
yeah.
I don't, on a personal level, my wife and I, like, we've just adjusted our schedules. So instead of taking our walks in the afternoon, we've gone out a couple of times. I've gone for runs, but I'm going at like 5:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. So there's no one around. So it's like there's really no risk to going out. The only downside is you're not getting any sun. So it's like taking vitamin D supplements right now. But really all we've done is we've just adjusted our schedules. I'm going to bed at like 8:30 at night and getting up at like 4:35.
It feels like we're in a movie. I went
It's
out
a little
last
bit.
night and no traffic, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't go out. I went to get takeout. So
I made a joke on Facebook the other day. It's like, it's weird in a way. There's no clash bang of traffic. It's just like, and there's birds like coming to our windowsill. So that's kind of cool in a way, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, it's really weird. It's kind
just
of
like a zombie movie.
It's
man.
I Am
it is like a
Legend.
zombie movie. I Am Legend. Yeah. It's, getting ready to get in shape and, run in my house and do my yoga and make a crossbow and be ready.
Hey, I hear you can make bows out of PVC pipe very easily.
I'll figure it out. I'm not afraid of a zombie apocalypse.
All right, so we're gonna move on to Def. What you been up to, man?
Well, I was sick, and I wasn't like bad sick, but because of what's going on, my boss is all like, "Hey, you're
Stay
going home for a week," and I'm like, "Dude, I'm good. It's just a minor cough and a few sneezes, and it doesn't matter. You're not coming back." So,
He thought you had the croner.
yeah. So anybody that's showing any minor symptoms is just, he's taking it serious.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah,
Well,
he should.
And while it sucks that there's a lot of people going unpaid because of that, at the same time, I think it's cool that businesses are taking it upon themselves and self-regulating. I don't know, like, I have other political opinions about this, but I think it's good from a public safety standpoint. All the financial standpoint aside, I think it's good that people are sending their employees home and keeping them home for the sake of keeping this from spreading as quickly as it could, like in a situation like in Italy.
I agree.
It's important. And then I did a Pantheon video that went up Saturday, and I had family in town, and that's pretty much it. I haven't really done much gaming this is kind of embarrassing. I downloaded that Warzone game from Call of Duty. I don't play battle royal games, but I played a couple rounds of that, and it's not my cup of tea, but it was also kind of fun.
Yeah, I just talking about that Fortnite game.
Well, I mean, it's just cool to see companies make cross-platform games. Any game that does that, I kind of want to give them a little support.
That's getting big numbers. I mean, the last I saw was like 3 or 4 days ago, and it had already hit like 15 million players. So.
Oh, dang. Yeah, man, it's just crazy. I'm not used to that style of gameplay, but instant queues and plenty of people. It was nuts. But
so does it play like a Fortnite, or does it play like an Apex? Like, do you have squads and stuff?
There's 2 modes. You can queue for solo, and you can queue with the squad.
Oh, interesting. So it's got both game modes.
Yeah. And I'm not familiar with Apex, or just a little bit. I played like 1 round of Apex,
Right.
but I've never played Fortnite or anything like that. So, but it's pretty fun, and it's new to me. So
I'm telling you, you got to go buy Division 2. I heard you talking about it in the stream the other day. It's worth it. It is.
I think it's on sale again too. And if Boom hears this or sees this, he's gonna lay that pressure on us.
I am not a big. I'm not necessarily a fan of that genre, so to speak. I like sci-fi shooters and stuff.
Yeah.
I played the first one. It was okay.
Yeah. See, I did too. I didn't like the first one, and that's why I'm like, people.
The second one is way better.
I tried the first one.
We got one comment on last week's video that said it was garbage and not to play it.
I actually, to be honest with you, that was like the end. I've never worn out a PlayStation 4 controller before, and I don't know if I'm just pressing things too hard because the game was so intense that I'm just like really into it. But I actually broke my PS4 controller playing Division 2.
Man.
Because I was just like hunched over, just like, and it's
so you
intense.
Didn't throw it?
No, I was just getting into it for a good 8 to 10 hours a day. I haven't played it in about probably 8 months now, so I don't know all the patches and stuff that they've done. But I played, the launch and then some of the stuff that came out after that up through the advanced campaigns. And man, it's fun, and the storyline, the way they've progressed it, I'm gonna just shut up now because we're ranting a little too much. But you should totally buy it.
I mean, if enough people keep telling us to play it, I guess we're gonna have to play it.
It's fun.
I'm not gonna lie. I went and looked up where I could get it last week after the stream, and when I found that it wasn't on sale, I kind of abandoned the idea. But if it's on sale again,
If it goes on sale, you should totally pick it up. It's totally worth money. Yeah, absolutely. Highly recommend it.
is it cross-platform? Do you know?
Don't know, actually. I played on the PS4, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we'll look into that, and we'll get back to you guys next week and let you know that we're playing in the weekend review. We're playing Division 2.
Well, we get nothing done for the channel because this game is so awesome. We're gonna be just playing it for hours on end.
Oh man. Anything else, Def?
Nope. Boring week.
Good stuff. You know, it's been pretty boring for me too, and that's a lie because it's been pretty eventful. So, because of things, the office has been slow, so my wife has come home early a couple days last week. We had a trip planned to go to Florida, where we're from, and because I'd be going down to see my grandparents, who are like my parents, I put that aside because I thought, you know, I don't want to get them exposed in case I've got it or if one of the kids have got it, because you can be a carrier without actually having symptoms of it. So I didn't want to expose my grandparents to that or her parents to that. So we opted to stay home. So she's got this entire week off. The kids were off of school last week because they're, you know, the corona thing. And then it's spring break this week. And I'm hearing hearsay that they may not be going back to school for the next 2 weeks. So it's like a little mini summer vacation. It's driving me nuts because I can't get any work done.
Joe, I was watching Joe Rogan's podcast the day or two before, and they were talking about they're pretty sure that California is just the kids are not going back to school this year. It's going to be the rest of the year.
Yeah, I've heard that
I think
for
there's
Kentucky
several
as well.
states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, it's, I don't know. They do things differently here in Arkansas. And I say they because I'm still new here, but we'll see. We'll see how things go. I'm sure my Arkansan friends that are in chat can give some feedback on that. So I hope they go back to school because I wasn't prepared for this.
I wasn't ready to have my sanity threatened.
So this is what happens. Like whenever the kids are home for an extended period of time, I work from home, but I build PCs. And I feel like I can't get anything done because there's just too much distraction during the day. So I end up staying up till like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and my sleep schedule gets all screwed up. So that's what's been happening. Like, and that's one of the things I want to talk about is, you know, I've been doing nothing but sleeping. I got a new bed about a month ago, and it's been the best thing that's happened to me in a really long time. So I've been doing a bunch of sleeping, and I like, because of the kids being home, I just haven't felt like doing it. I've got 3 computers that are like 90% built that I just need to cable manage and list, and they've just been sitting there, and I'm just like, you know, I get a week off too, don't I?
So are you, just out of curiosity, are you doing things on spec or are you doing commission builds?
I do both. So I do commission builds when people want them, so it's fairly infrequent, usually a few a month. And then just to keep money rolling in, I do a lot of refurbish because as my company, what I try to do is people that are just throwing away old computers, I want to make sure instead of going to the landfill or sitting in someone's closet, they get into the hands of a would-be gamer. And if I can get a gaming system into somebody's hands for $150, $200 that'll play things at 1080p low, you know, that's somebody who didn't have a gaming system who now has a gaming system. So I do that, and then I just kind of look for local deals. I take in trade-ins on the commissions, and I refurbish those and resell them. And basically what I'm trying to do, because especially since new pricing has got really good before this happened. Now there's a hardware shortage. I'm trying to... Yeah, it's real bad. I've watched prices on SSDs go up about 20% in the last week, so it's been pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm trying to transition into that because I still want to try to salvage old hardware, but a lot of these newer games that are coming out are relying on more and more cores. So, you know, going with even an Ryzen 3 or Ryzen 5 in previous generation is still better than going with like a 4th gen i5, which is my typical go-to.
It's funny that you said that. I saw Joe Leonard tweet yesterday or maybe today.
Yeah.
Webcam prices have gone up.
What?
Yeah, he was posting Amazon links about webcam prices going up. I thought that was crazy.
I'm going to have to look into that because I was looking for one. What's up, Omega? Welcome to the chat, man. Welcome to the stream. The last thing that I did is Guild Wars. I was able to get, you guys might not like this.
The first one?
Guild Wars 2.
Okay.
not everybody might be on board with this, but I like to get stuff from CD keys because I'm very there's a word here for this. Frugal with my money because I don't have a lot of it. So I got a copy of Guild Wars 2 for my wife for $10. And we used to play Final Fantasy 14 together, and just having to pay for a subscription regularly. We talked about this a little bit last stream. So I got her into to try Guild Wars, and she seems to be liking it so far. And I was like, you know what? There's no subscription for this. Why don't I get it for my kids too? So I went and bought 3 copies of Guild Wars 2, the Path of Fire, which apparently when you get that now, it also includes Heart of Thorns.
That's
So
nice.
they get everything. So we all have Guild Wars 2, and for the first time, I sat down with my family, my 14-year-old and my 9-year-old on
epic.
Discord, and we played an MMO together. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
I have a friend of mine who I've known since the EverQuest 1 days before he and his wife had kids, and I've from afar, they're in Canada now, but from afar I've watched his kids grow up, and I'll never forget. There was one time when they were around 5 and 6 that they were old enough that they were able to log into EverQuest with him and his wife, and they joined us, and we had this party adventure with him and these 5 of us going off and doing this little small adventure with characters in Greater Fate Arc, and it was just this I don't even have kids, but I felt this moment of like, this is awesome, like the next generation.
And that's awesome to hear because I didn't live with my dad growing up, but I hung out with him in EverQuest, so
Nice.
we were in Greater Fate Arc, and I've told this story before, but I'll never forget, being 13 and not understanding everything and slash out of character. Dad, are you on? As soon as we got the game, I got home and I didn't realize a friends list or anything like that or how to find them online. I just know that we played this awesome game, and then I went home and I'm trying to play and but that's
adorable.
Dad, where are you?
Everybody was responding. Yeah, I'm here, son. I'm like, oh.
Could you please repeat it?
No, Siri, you can't.
Whatever, Pete.
My bad. But anyway.
I think one of the coolest things though is, so my daughter's 9. She jumps into this, so everybody in the house has got a gaming computer, so she's pretty exposed to games. But her thing is Roblox and Minecraft, and she, she'll play some games with her brother and his friends every once in a while. She jumps into this game, and she is gone. And I'm like, baby, slow down, wait for mama and me. And she's just out front, ripping through it. She's going through these quests. We wake up the next morning, and my wife comes in, she's like, our daughter's playing Guild Wars by herself. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I get out of bed and I'm like, why aren't you on your computer? And she's like, Mom said I wasn't supposed to be playing that character. I was supposed to wait for you guys. And I was like,
she out-leveled you?
She got level 10. We were only level 8. I was like, baby, if you're having a good time, just do it. Just have some fun. So I took her out today and showed her some other, the main city that's there. And we used her level 80 boost, and we went and got her and my wife the mounts today. So that way they can get around the world a little bit quicker. Because Guild Wars, the maps are pretty big. So
yeah.
So it's just been an amazing experience. And I'm actually really excited because when we're done streaming here, because it's spring break and my daughter can stay up late, I'm going to go actually do some grinding. We're going to go do some quest grinding or heart grinding, if you will. So I'm really excited for that. So we can just end the stream now and I can go do that.
You'll be good.
All right. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I think what we should do now is we've got quite a few news segments and we're already 30 minutes in. So this will be a little bit longer stream, guys.
Strap in, ladies and gentlemen.
Here we go.
And now it's time for the Nerd News! Good evening, and thanks for tuning in to this part of the program where we discuss all things technology, comic books, film, art, and more.
All right, that's awesome. So I'm going to start off the news this week. The links for any of these news articles you can find in the description if you want to kind of read along with us or find out some more information about it. Normally we start off this segment with talking about entertainment news with regard to comics, movies, things like that. One thing I just want to talk about real shortly here is if the link in the description has a bunch of films that are movies that are being released directly to streaming platforms. They're being released instead of movie theaters. They're coming to platforms where you can rent them or buy them or whatever. And there's a bunch of other stuff that's coming out for free. DVDs that were supposed to come out in a month or so are releasing early. And some of the notable ones are Birds of Prey is a big one. I know a lot of people we're waiting for that to come out on DVD because it did terribly in theaters. So it's coming to DVD or the streaming services sooner than later, and you'll be able to buy that on March 24th for $19.99 through Amazon. There's a big list of movies here. Vin Diesel's new movie Bloodshot will be hitting. Where is it coming here? Digital box office thingy somewhere.
Which, I'll jump in on that real quick. I know a lot of people give him grief, but I gotta say, like, even though they're not like they're not like award-winning quality movies, I have never seen a Vin Diesel movie that I didn't have a good time watching.
Oh
like,
yeah, they're all fun.
He does a lot of like interesting sci-fi. Like the Riddick series is a good example of like a very good series that I literally just watched because I think it was on Netflix, the most recent one, recently, and I hadn't watched it in a few years, I think, since it came out. But he also did like the Last Witch Hunter, and was one he did a couple years ago. And there's one he did which I cannot remember the name of it now, but I've seen it 3 or 4 times. Where there's this other sci-fi one, Babylon AD, I think is actually what it's called. Where that one is that's like this amazing science fiction movie that he did like before he got like super famous for the Fast franchise, and I would highly recommend people check that out. But on a side note, I am looking forward to that Bloodshot, Bloodsport?
Yeah, Bloodshot. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I love anything with Vin Diesel in it, so I'll pretty much watch anything. One of my favorite scenes is the original Triple X movie where they're in the sewers and he's like, let's do this like it's PlayStation and blow shit up or something like that. And I was just like, he said that's awesome. And to find out he's actually a D&D nerd is just awesome. I love
some of his D&D stuff. Somebody was mentioning it in chat. I have seen his D&D videos. He's into it. It's pretty intense stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's,
not the
it's
sidetrack.
pretty awesome. Yeah. But yeah, so you can find those movies in that list, and it seems to be giving you a place where you can pick them up. Onward is another big one, the new Disney movie. All Disney releases are pretty big. So just, if you're interested in any of these movies, be sure to check out that link. That's why I provided it, because it's just a long list.
and if I may, so not only is that kind of changing, but movies that are coming out, and this goes back to the first stream when we came back, like, I think Wonder Woman 84 got pushed to December now. So a lot of these big superhero movies that we were talking about on that stream, that's all changing now.
Yeah, they're going to be. Yeah, James Bond is pushed back to November.
Oh man,
Wonder Woman, like all these really cool movies are now pushed. Like we were looking forward. My wife and I were looking forward to the John Krasinski and his wife did the new horror movie that they did. Is the second part where I can't remember what it's called now. Where everybody's got to be silent because the monsters can hear you.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
A Quiet Place.
Yeah, Quiet Place. And it's now that's got pushed back as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious. I'm gonna have to check that out and the first one because I'm gonna watch bits and pieces of the first one. So.
The first one's actually really good. Like I'm not a big horror movie fan. My wife and I sat through it and we're like, that's actually was a pretty intense film. Like it was good. It definitely gets you.
There's just something about it. It like made me think of like the Phone Booth movie from back in the 90s.
Oh my god!
It kind of gave me that what's his name was in it? John Goodman.
Oh,
Cloverfield?
10 Cloverfield Lane?
Cloverfield Lane, yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane. That movie was awesome, and that's what A Quiet Place. It kind of gives me that kind of vibe. I don't know why.
Worth it. It was worth it.
Now, Aaron, you had something that you wanted to talk about for news, right?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, for my nerd news, for those of you who are Clone Wars fans, Star Wars Clone Wars, my brother and I got really stoked because they cast Rosario Dawson in season 2 of The Mandalorian as Ahsoka Tano, which I thought it was perfect casting. I think she's a little on the older side to play that character. But I've loved her in all of the Marvel stuff, and I've followed her career for a really long time, back since Kids, which was a horrible movie in the 90s. But she's a great actress, and I think they picked someone good to play that character. So that's just my slight nerd news. I geek out over Star Wars stuff, so that was pretty cool.
And what did they cast her for?
Ahsoka Tano, who's basically Anakin's Padawan in the Clone Wars show, which is, I think she's probably one of the cooler characters in the sense that she has an arc that spans, because when she comes on in the beginning of the Clone Wars story, she's his Padawan, and she's probably supposed to be like 14, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets to grow up throughout the course of that show and then into Rebels. And you get to see the arc of what she becomes as a woman, and this like badass Jedi who leaves the Jedi Order because she doesn't agree with this whole black and white bullshit.
Right.
So she is the true definition of like a gray Jedi, in the sense that she's just out there doing, what's morally good, as opposed to what's good because the code says so. And she just has a really good character arc, especially having to deal with her master turning to the dark side and stuff. So if you're a Star Wars fan, the character of Ahsoka Tano is really cool. And when I saw that casting news, I was like, and also because it's The Mandalorian season 2. Season 1 was amazing, so I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I did a lot. I mean, Baby Yoda was adorable. The story was fun. Like, I didn't find it to be over the top like a lot of people did, and they were like, "Oh, this is the best show ever." But it was good.
No,
it was watchable.
Good. There was a few episodes in particular. My brother and I were kind of like, yeah, there were filler episodes, but for the most part, there was some really good elements in there. The episode that where the stormtroopers are trying to shoot the can and they can't hit it, and that's a nice little inside joke about stormtroopers can't hit anything they shoot at. I mean, there was just some really fun stuff in there overall for fans of the series, but I think they did a really good job. And like the opening, I think it's not spoiler territory at this point, but the opening episode, I could bring you in warm or I could bring you in cold. I just had goosebumps, and I was like, that was so fucking cool. Like, yeah, there were elements of that show that were really awesome.
It was good. And the description of it being like, the Wild Wild West, it really was pretty true for the biggest extent of it. But that scene with the stormtroopers on the last episode, it just had me dying, man. It was pretty epic. If you guys haven't seen this yet, definitely pick up Disney Plus. I think it's only like $6.99 or something like that. It's cheap. Pick it up, watch The Mandalorian. It's pretty great if you're a Star Wars fan. So moving along here, Def, you had I had a news article I was going to talk about. Hold on. All right. So do you want to do your iRacing thing, or do you want to hold off on that? And
I could go ahead and do it. It's short and sweet because we got some Saga of Lucimia to get into. I just thought it was cool. I'm not a NASCAR guy, but I work with people that are into NASCAR, and I believe it was yesterday. Some of like Dale Earnhardt Jr., some other people I don't know that are famous NASCAR drivers, were doing the iRacing thing. And I just thought it was cool because this whole quarantine thing going on. You got NASCAR doing that, and I believe there's some NBA players that are getting on. What is it? NBA 2K. That's the top basketball game right now. And it's all these esports companies getting athletes or celebrities into the esport genre, and I just think that's pretty neat. It's a really cool thing that's happening right now with everybody stuck in their homes. But I put a video in the description, and it's kind of neat that you were talking when I was telling you about it, Punk. You were talking about how iRacing is the closest thing to real racing.
Right.
And they had a driver on there and they were interviewing him, and he had a setup behind him and everything. And he was talking about how he was going to be more nervous racing iRacing than he would be for real racing. And he talks about, like going into the pit stops and how everything's just so like precise and you can't make any mistakes and all this stuff. So I just thought that was really cool because, you think NASCAR, you're like, when I think NASCAR, yeah, you know what I mean? Like I'm from Texas, so, it's a big thing here. And I'm not into it, but I don't I don't think of the technology and the things that they use. And apparently, iRacing is a good form of training that these guys go through. And that was all new information to me, and it's kind of in the news cycle right now. So I just thought that was kind of cool.
I didn't know any of that, so that's interesting to know. The only thing which I mentioned before the show, like I actually watched some of the stream today because I came across an article and I was like, that sounds interesting, but you just expounded on it more. Like I had no idea that that they were actually using it for training purposes. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's I've built several rigs for people here that are using it for iRacing, and most people will start off with like a small, they've got the wheel and the pedals, and people will actually build like multi-$1,000 rigs to sit and have it feel like an actual car with multi-monitor or large ultra-wide monitors. And
oh yeah, that's what this guy had, man. He had like 3 giant monitors, just like. Oh, it looked awesome.
And you can adjust like your camber on your wheels. You can change your spring response. Like you can change everything about your suspension, your transmission, your motor.
Crazy.
And they actually, what they did is they traveled the world, and they used drones and whatnot to map out real tracks. So you're actually playing real tracks. It's pretty sick. And I think there's like 100 tracks or something like that, 100 plus tracks. And wow. It's like flight simulator level of like people wanting to, because you have your niche people that enjoy that sort of thing.
Really get into it.
And
I think I've been.
Go ahead.
Sorry, not to interrupt.
Well, I was just going to say it doesn't require a lot of system resources, which is really cool. So you can play iRacing at like ultra, and it's so optimized. You can play it on ultra 1080p with something as simple as like a 770, GTX 770. So it's pretty sick.
I know I've paid attention to some of the guys that are like, even just for like where Star Citizen is in their state of alpha, and people are already building these multi-$1,000 rigs, which I mean I'm on board to do that once the game launches. Like I've already kind of planned out getting a flight stick and all the controls and everything. Mm-hmm. But there are people who will put $10,000-$15,000 into like this rig just for like a flight sim or a space sim.
Yeah,
which blows my mind.
That's pretty cool though. Like I could imagine
is. I mean,
super fun if you had the space.
When you see it, and it's like they've got the chair and like the command center, and it's like all set up. You're like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like that's
Nerd.
like just give me an IV drip and hook me up for 10 days. I'm
there
good.
No, it's not too long before we're going full dive like in Sword Art.
We're getting there.
Last little piece of news that I have here is just something short and sweet. Posted an article in the description. So the University of New Mexico published a new paper that was showing that the composition of the moon is actually primarily comprised of the planet Theia that smashed into Earth, which formed the moon. So it's not moon. The moon is not comprised of primarily Earth. It's primarily Theia. And I thought that was pretty cool to think about that, because if I totally didn't give any thought to that in a long time. And then when this article came up, it really made me remember how like our moon, Luna, or whatever you want to call it, was created. And it was, because our moon is huge compared to other moons. And it was created because there were two planets, a smaller planetary body smashed into ours, which caused the magma to eject and create the moon that we have today. And they were able to determine this by analyzing moon rocks, and there are far more oxygen isotopes that are on that moon than there are in Earth rock. And I think the cool thing about that is maybe that's some sort of indication as to how we got the chemical composition that we have in our atmosphere, because maybe the composition of Theia was primarily oxygen, and it created this this really unique way of supporting life on our planet. So it just kind of gets some gears turning, and I thought it was pretty cool. If you guys want to check that article out, again, it's in the description.
On that note too, for those who aren't paying attention, the Artemis program that NASA's running is highly fascinating if you have any interest whatsoever in what NASA is doing in terms of pushing towards having a base of operations on Mars to use as a springboard base of operation on the moon as a springboard for Mars exploration. It's called the Artemis. I think it's the Artemis Expedition is what it's called. But I actually follow it pretty regularly because I'm fascinated with the idea of interstellar travel.
Yeah.
And so we're moving in that direction. It probably won't happen in our generation. We're definitely with Elon Musk pushing for that, as well as NASA. Just because you brought up the moon, it brought that to mind.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool, and it makes so much more sense, as you know, especially if they can get find ways to transport raw materials and develop spacecrafts on the moon, because there's no atmosphere, lower atmosphere there.
Did you watch? Brad Pitt had a movie that came out recently called Ad Astra.
I have
That's
not yet,
on
but I
my
want
to
to.
watch list. Yeah.
So the movie itself it's I'll let people form their own opinions about it, but one of the coolest things I thought about that movie was when he goes on the journey. Like, the whole process is he goes from Earth to the moon, and they have like a main base on the moon, but then they have like a launch platform on the dark side of the moon for these, where you can go, and they launch spacecrafts from that launch pad deeper into space on these interplanetary journeys. But the way they portrayed that in the film was really well done, because they have to actually make a journey across the moon from the main base to this other landing platform, and just it was very realistic in that's kind of what NASA's working on right now, is establishing that main base on the moon so that we can have this this launch platform that we can use for these greater missions to Mars. So if you do get a chance to watch the movie, it is an interesting science fiction film. It's a little slow, but has some really cool graphics in it for sure.
Well, that is awesome. And I'll have to check out the Artemis program too, because I just kind of stopped following NASA when like all the funding and stuff was cut years back, and SpaceX and Virgin and all those other independent companies started like being the forefront of progression in technology for that. So
the only reason I even got back into them is because Chris and I went and we did a speaking engagement at a conference in Huntsville, Alabama. I think that might have been to like 2017, like spring of 2017, I think is when we did that. And because we were there as part of the travel industry, we were working with the local tourism board, and as a result, we got to go tour the actual NASA facilities there.
Cool.
Which, on a gaming side note, Richard Garriott's his spacesuit's at that right next to his dad's spacesuit in that NASA headquarters. So I actually, because I got to meet a lot of the scientists working at NASA while we were there on site, it actually got me kind of interested in what they were doing, because I was getting to hear it firsthand from these people who, even though their budget had been cut, and everything, they're still very excited about what they're working on.
Yeah.
And then that got me kind of excited for what they're doing with the Artemis program. So
that's pretty
cool stuff.
That is really cool. Yeah, that is awesome. I love talking about space stuff. Like this nerd news segment, man. It's so much fun. All right, so go ahead. You got something else?
Oh, I was going to say we can get carried away because I can talk about space all day.
yeah, it kind of happens, but we've had really good feedback. People seem to love the nerd news segment. It's bringing new people into the stream, so I think that's awesome. So the last piece of news, I know that was the last piece of news I said, but this is also part of what we're about to talk about. So in gaming news, Saga of Lucimia has reopened their pre-order store this week, which is awesome. If you're interested, be sure to check that out on sagaoflucimia.com, or you can use our affiliate link that's in the description. We would really appreciate if you use that link.
Yeah, I would urge everyone, if you're watching this show and through the course of just listening to me talk, let's say you go away from this and you're not ready, but you want to go watch some of the streams that we've done on our YouTube channel, please make sure you come back and use their affiliate link, because that supports them directly, as opposed to just, we'll take your money no matter what. But, I would like to give some back to the people who are supporting us. So don't forget to use their affiliate link, please.
I appreciate that, Ren. And if you guys want to check out some, a bit of a teaser of what you're going to get into and kind of see and make sure this is something that you want to get invested in, you can check out Renfail. Did you stream you streamed on the Saga of Lucimia Twitch, right?
Yeah, but you can follow us on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Saga of Lucimia, but the videos are up on YouTube now. We've done, I think, about 5 hours of streams in the last, the ones you want to watch for is the preview number 3, which was probably 3 weeks ago. And then we did a live stream. That was like an hour and a half. And then we did a 2.5-hour stream last Wednesday on the 18th when the pre-order store went live. And then I did an impromptu stream, I want to say on like Sunday, which was like an hour and a half long. So there's 5 or 6 hours of stuff if you want to chew through those videos.
And this is important. Go ahead.
That Wednesday stream was awesome. It's jam-packed with with all kinds of good information.
Yeah, that was our showcase stream. So that was us coming.
Yeah,
that was
that was
us
a good
coming out
one,
of the
dude.
dark for
Yeah.
after the last year of being under NDA and just kind of showcasing everything we've been working. Not everything, but like 85% of what we've been working on the last year, just kind of putting it out there in the public, getting people up to speed what we've been working on.
Right, and that's the reason why I bring this up, because if you're signing up for the alpha, don't think of it as like a pre-order in the sense of you're pre-ordering to get early access to a game. I know with Pantheon, there's a lot of mistakes when it comes to that mentality. Sign up because you want to help get Saga off the ground, and you want to help find those bugs and help QA and just get in there and be part of that experience.
It's not play testing. It's
Yeah.
actual testing. And if you watch the 2.5-hour stream from March 18th, there's actually a segment in there. I multiple times throughout the video, like I talk about, here are the reasons why you might want to support us, and here are all the reasons why you might not want to support us.
That's what I love about you.
Because if you're just looking for something to play, then we're not going to be something you want to waste your money on, because traditionally our servers are only up once a week on Wednesday nights. Now for the month of April, they're up for 4 weekends. But once we're done with that, we'll go back to the once weekly thing. And we've got a lot of people who are like, well, I'm not going to spend money if you're not up all the time. And it's like, that's fine. Like, wait till the game's out, because it sounds to me like you just want to play. If you want to test and help us build something better, like our early access community, that we've had for the past 4 years, like the whole last year, these Wednesday night test sessions, they've been there religiously every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. You guys have been there for a few of them even.
Oh yeah.
But those people have really helped us shape what we've built, especially over the last year, because we've been able to get that intense feedback from people, because they're logging in to kick the buckets that we ask them to kick. We're getting feedback on specific features, on specific mechanics, on specific things. As an example, you'll see the auto attack button on the bottom left of the hotbar, and there's these dockable little circles that pop out from that when you're in or out of combat. And if you're in combat, they go in. When you're out of combat, they go out. Like, that's a direct feature. That's a direct result of the early access community giving us feedback on things they would like to see to help us refine that process. And we added it in because it was like, that actually sounds really cool. And then through the course of like 3 iterations, we were able to get it to something that worked the way we wanted it to work.
Yeah.
So it is about testing, not about playing. That's an important distinction to make, because we don't want you giving us your money and then be disappointed because you can't log in all the time. But you can log in once a week, and then 4 weekends in the month of April.
And I will tell you, it's awesome to be part of that, guys. So if you're interested in it, definitely, if you just want to meet some new people, you want to be part of this process, and you want to watch the game grow, it is awesome to be part of that, because I got my alpha access the last time the store was open, about a week before it closed, and I have attended quite a few of the alpha tests, and I can never break anything, but Adric breaks everything all the time.
Adric breaks everything.
Well, I want to jump onto that, and it's fun when you're testing with you guys. It's always fun. We're cutting up, we're having fun, cracking jokes. It's testing, but in a way, it's kind of like you're playing, because you're just playing around with some people that you get to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Awesome.
It's pretty fun.
So if you want to get on with that, check out the Saga of Lucimia YouTube channel to see those videos. If you just want to jump on and support, the link's in the description. If you decide you want to support later, again, come back to the video. Any proceeds from that link will go back into the channel. We've got some new camera gear and stuff that we want to pick up here in the near future. So it'd be really awesome if you want to get on board with that. We're going to move on to the subject at hand. We are about almost an hour in. Oh my gosh, this new format is crazy.
Yeah, don't worry about the time. We'll be here a while.
All right. So
as long as I get a bio break, I'm good.
I'm gonna need one. We might want to take one before we dive in too deep, because I would not. I can wait.
Yeah, that sounds good. We're gonna take a brief intermission here, guys, just for about 2 minutes. I'm gonna test an intermission page that probably has nothing on it. So we'll be back here in about 2 minutes, guys. Maybe.
About.
All right.
2 minutes.
Viewer discretion is.
Yeah. So my intermission page was never completed. I didn't think we were gonna need that. My bad, guys. I will just sit here and talk to you guys. So how's everyone doing tonight? Everyone excited? about talking about Saga of Lucimia. I've got some good questions here, and we're gonna let Ren just have the floor and talk because he's really good about that. So, if you guys are tuning in via VOD, be sure to check out the stream that we did previously. I don't have an intermission scene set up, so I'm just talking.
It's all good. I'm back.
But check out the previous stream where Ren spills a lot of the beans on, a lot. Some of it will be reiterated tonight, but it's going to be really nice to go back and compare that last stream to this stream so we can call Ren out on some of the promises. No, I'm just kidding.
Try to play that MMORPG.com troll game.
But I had a lot of fun last time, man.
That's awesome. And yeah, I know you guys have a lot of questions in this too, but I would say anybody who wants to throw questions in the stream,
please,
as well.
Yeah, we did get a few text messages. Well, one very lengthy question, but we'll go over that during a certain section.
There's always one.
It's actually a very good question. So
I'll also remind people too. We've done a couple of we did a couple of really good deep dive interviews with MassivelyOP. I want to say like 2 weeks ago, which I think kind of give a very high level kind of overview. It was an interesting interview for me because they've spent 4 or 5, basically 5 years, I think, kind of cherry picking quotes out of our blog posts and YouTube videos and not always representing us in a correct light because they never came to the source and actually, got the information from us personally. So getting a chance to do this deep dive interview, it was a very pleasant process, and they actually, it was a very good back and forth. So I was very pleasantly surprised with that, and they did a really good kind of high level overview on the company and the game as well. And then MMORPG.com as well did a couple of interviews about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, as well, for people who really want to deep dive into things.
Looking for that right now. Here we go. So
I think
this month?
on a personal level, I feel that the MassivelyOP interviews, they were both 2-parters. The MassivelyOP interviews, I think, I can give you the links to those later too. But the 2 MassivelyOP interviews, I think, were really well done. The MMORPG.com ones were pretty good. But it was a weird thing because we did a phone interview and then he took snippets out to create the 2 interviews, and it doesn't come across quite as organically as the written ones did for Massively because I was actually typing out my replies, and it was a very back and forth process.
Gotcha. Well, what I did is I went ahead and found the link from the article that was released on MassivelyOP on the 6th of this month in the description. So if you guys want to check that out, it's there for your viewing pleasure, your reading pleasure, if that's your thing. Wow, that's a lot of reading.
Yeah, it was. They gave me a series. I wrote them a 6,000 word reply, so they split it up into 2 pieces because it was like that's too much for a single interview. No one's gonna sit. And I was like, yeah, just split it up however you want to.
All right, so we got Def back here, so let's go ahead and dive in. So I want to start this off by having you talk a little bit, because you're an author, and this is based off this universe that you've created with your literature and I'm assuming previous D&D campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about the world of Saga of Lucimia? Like, tell us a little bit about, like, maybe expand on the video that we've seen in the past that's kind of like the intro to the game.
Oh, you're talking about the lore video where we had like the old animated video that we did? Man, that's out of date, but also it is still good information. So I kind of started this off when I first created the campaign. I just had the idea of this world where magic was around, and we kind of started off as like a normal D&D campaign, but as we got deeper into the campaign, just the way it was playing out, we had your typical classes. We were using 2nd edition AD&D, and so we had all of your mages and wizards, and it was a very normal campaign, just using my made up map and world and stuff as opposed to like the Forgotten Realms setting.
Right.
And just as the course of that went along, we came into this setting where we were following on the steps of this wizard, and that kind of became the basis of, in my mind, this corrupt wizard And then once I had that in my mind, after that campaign played out, I went away and I played around with this concept of this corrupt wizard who basically did something so bad that the elves were like, oh, humanity is like not capable of handling magic. Like they're too fucked up and too childlike. Like, and so they said we're gonna take magic away from humanity. And so that kind of served as like the basis for the story, was this world where the elders decided that humanity was too irresponsible,
Right.
and took it away. So that kind of started the wheels spinning way back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then just over the years, that kind of spun out into this world where the adepts, which became the Aiden Than, were just a shriveled kind of corrupt version of what once was. If you can kind of imagine, I'm gonna use a very real world example that's may not be entirely relevant, but if you think like the Masons of today,
Right.
compared to what maybe the Masons of like 200 years ago were, like they were more of an influence on society than they are in today's world, but they are still around and people still reference them and are members of their society and so on and so forth. But they're not influential anymore. Like they're just this weird group that people join. No offense to anybody who might be a part of them. But you kind of think it like that. Like at one time, the Ainthan were, they had elves in their council room, and they had the Dwerhe, and it was all of these great minds. And then just when they decided to retire from the world, it was just this group of humans who, over the years, because they saw magic slipping away from them, they became more and more intent on gathering every last object into their little museums and like holding on to that kernel of power, because that's what makes them important. And in the current setting of book 1, which is the volume 1 setting for our world, magic's been gone for hundreds of years, 500, 600 years. And what's left is you have these basically these once time wizards who are like, now they're in their whatever 7th generation or something, and they haven't been able to actually tap into magical power for hundreds of years, but they have all these items that they can use, and that makes them important to the king, because they could do things. They could do things like, help when there's not enough rain, and they can bring water up from the water beds to water the crops. They can move ships across the ocean when there's not enough breeze and the doldrums have hit. So, they keep themselves in a position of power by keeping themselves tied to the king and the economy of the kingdoms. But if you take that away from them, it's really just a bunch of old men. This is going to reflect very much with, kind of the political structure that we have today. A bunch of old men trying to hold on to power, and they're terrified of losing it, and they're terrified of anyone who's younger and anything that can take that power away from them. So we come into this world with, like, for example, the character, which ironically, the character of Amelia was someone from the book anyway, not to have a lot of spoilers, but she was a character that came later into the writing process, because when I first drafted things back in the in 2008, she was not part of the equation. And then over time, especially because I was heavily influenced by reading like The Wheel of Time, I began to realize that I really needed some female characters in there. And then when I put her in, she ended up becoming, like, for many people, she became the focal point of book 1, and kind of like this resonating figure of what it means to be a human in Lucimia when there is this hope of potentially, kind of learning magic once again. And so that's the essence, without getting into too many spoilers for the book and stuff. That's kind of the essence of where the world is set, is that we're in a world where magic still exists. It's just that most humans don't know how to tap into it, except for this corrupt group of old men who want to hold on to their little relics. And then there's this threat that's happening from over the seas, but it's not the threat that you think, because this is where I get to tease a little bit of volume 2, because I'm a good chunk of the way into the book draft now. What you think is going on in volume 1, towards the end of volume 1, is revealed to not necessarily be the case. And you find out that this threat from across the sea is not necessarily what you thought it was. So there's some fun stuff that I get to do there, but it definitely is a story of two ancient magics coming back to fight each other. And that's a theme we see in, I could quote a million fantasy books, a million science fiction universes. Like, that's a very common trope that we see. You know, you've got these ancient evils, ancient goods. You know, that's definitely going on behind the scenes because, let's face it, it works as a backdrop for pretty much any story out there.
It does. And if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? I mean,
right. And it serves as a great setting to put our humans into and say, this is what the world, this is what's happening in the world around you. And so the setting of the game, just like the setting of the first book, is all about putting humans into this situation where there's this political stuff that's going on. There's this magical stuff that's going on. There are these world-changing events that are going to happen regardless of whether you want them to happen or not, kind of like coronavirus. Like, and you just have to learn, you know, you have to figure out where you fit into that and adapt, which is why, from a lore perspective, I've talked about this before in the past, maybe even on your show. In our game, when you start your character, you are not a hero. You're not some destined, prophesied one. You're literally just a grunt. You're a peon. You're a nobody, and you have to figure out for yourself where. Yeah, what did you say, peasant?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just a.
And I love that about the game, that you're just a nobody. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out where you fit into the world and into the lore of that. And I mentioned this probably most recently in the Massively interview. I think of the Saga of Lucimia as less of a game and more of a setting, in the sense that Dragonlance is a setting or Forgotten Realms is a setting.
Okay.
It's there for you to adventure in. And because we've talked a lot about how our quests don't have experience points and they can be done for lore, they're not necessarily done for character progression. You can choose to ignore those quests and just go off and have adventures in the world based on what you and your friends want to do, which is no different than a D&D campaign, in the sense that maybe your dungeon master has a campaign planned out. Maybe there are modules that you could follow, or you could just use that setting to have your own adventures and become, you know, Bard the Bear Slayer, you know, and that's what you do, is you go out with your friends on Friday nights and you kill bears and you get the hides and you bring them back to town and you sell them to other players to become crafters, or you use them for your own goods and you make leather weapon or leather armor and you become like the best leather maker in Fingless Mirror. Like, it's up to the people who are playing the game. It's up to them to decide what kind of an adventure they want to have. Although there are quests they can follow if they choose to pursue those.
Right.
But it's more of a setting than anything else.
And that's what I love. Like, this is what made me fall in love with Saga of Lucimia to begin with, because I was looking for, you know, popular MMOs that were to come out in the future, and obviously Pantheon was on that list, and then there was all the, you know, Ashes of Creation, Chronicles of Lyria, and then here's Saga of Lucimia. I was like, that has a really neat sounding name. What is this? And I go to your site, and then you have those blog articles that you did, you know, where you talk about milk runs, where you talk about you're not the hero, you're brutally honest about the whole, like, if you want to become a tester, you're going to be a tester. And I just fell in love with this. Like, this is a person. This isn't somebody like necessarily trying to like push this generic crappy WoW clone of a product. This is somebody who there's heart and soul in this.
I remember you reading that list off to me, or reading that blog post. you're laughing.
5 reasons not to buy the Saga of Lucimia.
Yes, that was one I sent to Dev to look at.
we joked about that for a long time, but to be honest with you, that actually to this day is our number one sales page. It's the number one referrer of sales on our website, and that post has been up for like 5 years now, I think 4 or 5 years.
That is awesome.
That post is like the number one referrer of sales in terms of landing pages on our website. It's so funny, and I literally just updated it for some MMORPG.com trolls about 2 weeks ago, because that's what it's there for.
That's awesome.
So the thing is, so you're talking about how you start off as, you know, nobody, as Def said, like a peasant. For me, like, I don't know if this stemmed from watching like Dot Hack back in the day, and then Sword Art Online and various other animes, but like we had these sandbox MMOs back in the day, and you know, you had I think it was more like a time investment made it feel like you're more ingrained in the world. And in modern culture, we don't really have those kinds of MMORPGs anymore. And to be able to, like, even Project Gorgon, like, you had this sense of freedom, but there was also still this, like, you know, I got to go here, I got to do the favors, move on to the next hub, go here, do the favors. But I still feel like you start off in a lot of these games that are even sandboxy, you still start off as like this predestined hero. And for me, like, I just like the idea of, like, I just start as nobody, and if I so choose, I could never leave the local vicinity of the starting town if that's the way I wanted to play that character.
Yeah, you don't have to.
And I could just be, you know, I could go out and farm deer, and maybe you'll put fishing in and I could fish. You know, that could be my whole thing.
Just be a hunter-gatherer.
So you were talking about, what was the name of the character again that you added later on?
Amelia. She got added around 2012, I think. 2011, 2012. I don't remember the exact timeline.
Okay. Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just umming at the end of that.
So
kind of segue into our next question.
So right, so that's one of the reasons why I bring that up. So I was in the Saga of Lucimia Discord, and you guys were having a chat. Also, there's a Saga of Lucimia Discord, guys. Be sure to join that because a lot of good discussion goes on there, and you can give your feedback there as well. But one of the discussions that was taking place, and I missed a lot of it, was about will characters from the book actually show up in the game?
Have either one of you played Lord of the Rings Online?
No, I've watched friends play it, and I've always wanted to give it a shot, but I never did.
It'll be a similar fashion. So there will be main characters from the books. So this actually ties into a question somebody asked recently, I think on Discord. They said, "Is it going to matter if I've read the book or not?" And really, no, it won't. But there is this kind of level of Easter egg going on where if you've read the book and you're interacting with these characters in the game, you're going to be like, oh, so this is who that is, and that's this person, and oh yeah, and kind of the way the Volume 1 storyline will move you will be interacting with the main characters at various points along the way, even though you might not directly be doing a quest for or with them, but you'll be interacting with them if you're following the main storyline. And again, it's entirely optional, but that's in there as a way of sort of, you're kind of following the events of what are, the events of the day in terms of what's going on in the kingdoms of Lucimia. And man, I don't want to drop spoilers for people who haven't read the book, but there's this thing that happens in the capital city that throws the capital city into chaos. And if you're in the capital city, when that's all happening, you're going to be seeing names mentioned and interacting with some characters that are going to be familiar if you've read the book. And then once that gets passed and there's the journey of another character out of the city, if you're over in that part of the world as that character is making their journey, you're going to be interacting with, or at least seeing that person or those individuals take that journey and possibly interacting with them along the way. So yes, in a very similar way, I really loved the way Lord of the Rings did it, which was why I really looked to them when I was saying, how do I adapt my book to an MMORPG format? And I went, well, the setting of the world is easy, but I can also take that volume book chapter format and use that because it worked really well in Lord of the Rings Online. And if I do it that way, then I can also kind of interject, main characters as well as secondary characters, and also, locations from the book, like this tavern, and now I'm at this tavern. If you're just playing the game, it's just going to be another tavern.
Right.
But if you read the book and you're like, this is where that happened, like this tavern where that took place.
And I do remember that about Lord of the Rings Online back in the day when it first came out. It had that feel. You're like, oh, this is this place, and you're just so
I'm at the Prancing Pony. I'm at Weathertop. This is so fucking cool.
It's awesome. And like now I have to read the books, even though I've suck at getting some time to read these days. Def, I think you had a question in regard to that.
I have a very serious question, and I'll go ahead and ask it. Will there ever be an audio book?
I get asked that a lot. You
We
know,
know
I don't
this
know.
really cool guy named Chris Kane. I don't know if he's up for it or not, but dude, he's got a beautiful voice, and he does lore videos for Pantheon. Not for Pantheon, but he does Pantheon lore videos on his
Sure.
own channel. He would, I don't know if he does audiobooks, but I would listen to that. book
We've
all
had
day.
some conversations with people, and there are a few people I've looked at who I could potentially see doing it. I just don't see there being a big enough demand for it yet.
Bro,
Yet.
It's one of those
bro,
things
I
where
need it. So there you go.
if the demand gets big enough, maybe I'll run like a Kickstarter for it or something and see where it goes.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll have to get something going here.
Because
So,
there are some relatively kind of, you know, not no this is not meant to be a derogatory comment. There are some really good amateur voice actors who I would feel comfortable using and doing a small Kickstarter to raise enough money to get them on board would potentially work. But you know, trying to get a big name person who's going to cost me $50,000, that's just out of the question. You know, but if we could
Okay.
do something
yeah.
$10,000-$15,000, I'd be totally down for that. But there would need to be a demand for it, and it's unfortunately it's one of those things where right now I just don't have enough time to organize that. But I've you know, there's been 15, 20 people who have asked me about it over the last couple of years, which is not enough to justify it. But you know, if it starts getting to the point where it's like 300, 400 people who are asking about it, then I'll be like, okay, you know, now it's financially worthwhile to make it happen.
There you
Well,
have
you
it,
know-
Jeff. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, in today's generation, the podcast generation, I haven't read a book in so long. The only books I read really are comic books. I haven't read a chapter book in so long. And that's just because of audiobooks. I can, on my way to work, I can get, 15, 20 minutes in. On my lunch break, I can get
My
20
brother
minutes
does it.
in. You know what I mean?
He's sitting there driving
It's-
his excavator during the day, and he's listening while he's driving his excavator. You
Yeah,
know?
and if you have a good voice doing it, it kind of brings you in, and your imagination gets going like you're reading the book, and it's just a good pastime.
It could happen, but again, it's about the demand. So if you want to go out there and cheerlead for us,
Yeah,
that's your new project.
So, Def, you just got to get with those other, 20, 30 people and raise 10 grand to get an amateur book reading. Or here's a thought, find somebody, some local grandma that's bored to read it to you.
That could work. The guy who did the voiceover for our
That's a
lore
good
video
idea,
was literally one of our team members. Is no longer with us, but one of his dad actually did the voiceover
Okay,
for
that's
that video.
cool. Now, before we move on to more meat and potatoes about the design of the game, Mira Riff says, did you use any of your player characters from your D&D campaign into the books and or
Yep.
game?
Both. The character of Renfail, he's in there. So yes, there are my own personal characters are in there, more than just one. But I don't want to spoil, but you'll figure out who Renfail is when you read the book. And then also very early on, and he just popped his head in recently. One of the guys who was part of this, but we did a Kickstarter, not a Kickstarter. I don't know why I said Kickstarter. We did a private crowdfunded thing years ago, like 2015, where we sold, I think, 5 or 6 spots into this special D&D campaign that I DM'd for 6 months, and it was a campaign set kind of about 700 years before the end of the Great War. And so I DM'd this campaign. We streamed some of the episodes on our YouTube channel, but we actually recorded all the episodes. And those characters undertook this journey for the 6-month campaign. And I actually have saved all those episodes. And what I have done is I've taken the armor pieces and the adventures that those people took, and basically the adventure that they undertook is getting put into these pages of lore that you're going to find sprinkled throughout the world, and it will be a side quest to go collect all these books and pages, and these will be leading you to dungeons. And when you complete these quests, you're going to end up finding pieces of armor from these named characters that took part in this campaign that we ran, like 4 or 5 years ago. So that's another way. Even those weren't my personal characters, they're being put into the game as this kind of epic quest line that'll take people 6 months or
Yeah.
so to complete.
That's pretty cool.
But we did, and that was all just we had it was Carl Savant. He popped into our Discord recently. He was one of the people. We had I think it was 5 people in total, and we did about 6 months of the campaign. But yeah, my personal characters, there's I think 3 that are in the book, and I could probably put more into the game. But and then we've got those from those people as well.
That's really cool, man.
That
is
is
really cool. All right, so we're gonna. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop those in chat. If you have any questions and you're watching this on the VOD, drop those in the comments section. We are going to have Renfail on again next week.
Next Monday, yeah.
Yeah, next Monday. So leave those comments here, and then we'll try to get answers for those questions between now and the next stream, and get you responded to. So moving on to the design perspective of where we're at now. So there's been a lot of big changes since the last time we spoke. So can you tell us a little bit about the process of preparing from like the last time we sat down, or even the last alpha release that you guys did? Can you tell us a little bit about the preparation and the process from then until now, and like what differences we'll see, and maybe what the process was along the way?
Yeah, I think the big thing that we did was we revamped the back end again, which we didn't want to do, but it had to happen.
Right.
That was one of those areas where, and we've been very open about this, because we didn't have any previous experience coming into this. We used third-party solutions for our network the first few years, and unfortunately, every time we would start to get comfortable with third-party solution, they would drop support, and we'd be kind of like going, well, crap, we can't continue to use this because they're no longer going to support it. And then the last thing we did was we were using Unet, which was Unity's solution, and then they said that they were no longer going to be using that beyond Unity 2018, and we were kind of like, well, if they're going to get rid of this, like, we're kind of in a position where we just need to come up with our own solution. So at that point, we had enough experience by then to be able to take it up and do our own from scratch. So that was the big part of stage 2 was getting. And for those of you who, like, I think you were a part of that, so you saw this. Like, we went from having a full-fledged playable pre-alpha, and then we stripped it all away, and you guys were logging into the GM zone, which was literally a checkerboard with no graphics and no textures or anything like that. And then we just kind of built that back end back up from there, and then started adding back in the land masses and the textures and all the other stuff. So a big chunk of that was getting the back end. The other chunk of that was just the art team working on creating assets. So I covered this in greater detail in the Massively article, but I'm gonna give a brief version of it here. If you took World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, Lord of the Rings Online, EverQuest 2, 10 other games, I don't care what games you want to say, take 10 of the most popular MMORPGs today, stripped out the art styles, and stuck them in to the Unity engine using store-bought Unity assets, could you still tell those games apart? And the reality is that the vast majority of users are going to have a very hard time, even though those games have very distinguished and distinct features and mechanics. Most people can't separate art style from mechanics.
Right.
So if you took all those games and you put them into the Unity engine and store-bought assets, they're going to look at those and go, all those games look the same, therefore all those games are the same, which is not true. But the perception is that it's true because they all look the same. So one of the big things for us over the last year was, that's one of the reasons we didn't have an NDA in pre-alpha, because we were using a lot of store-bought assets, which every fucking game that uses the Unity engine does. Every game. Yeah. They start off go back and look at Pantheon's early pre-alpha stuff, and you'll see the exact same assets that we were using at that time. Go early enough and try the avatars videos, you'll see the same exact assets being used. Yeah, now,
Project Gorgon too, you see that as
Project
well.
Gorgon. Over time, the art teams replace those assets with their own. And that's what we were really working on. We're at the point where we are now with this new zone for stage 3. I'd say we're probably 50-50. Before we were probably 20-80, like 80% store-bought, 20% our own. Now we're about 50-50, maybe 60-40 with the 60 in our favor, depending on what part of the zone we're talking about. So back end, art, those were kind of two big things. Then there was just kind of adding additional functionality. Before we only had like, I think 4, if maybe 5 actual VFX in the pre-alpha. I took basically September, October, November and created, I really don't know, 40, 50 different visual effects.
Okay.
And I'm not that good at it, but I was able to piece things together and get it good enough where we are for an alpha product. So, there was VFX, there was art, there was back end. There's just a lot of different stuff that was going into kind of getting us towards this point. That's kind of what we were working on the kind of, getting the game looking and feeling and working better. And on the back end was just doing, and this is mostly on John, so kudos to John, just really hammering on the pitching and bringing on board investors and etc., which we're in a really good place right now. And I was telling you guys before the show, like, we can't reveal all these details yet, but we just signed ink on some really exciting paperwork last week. That's a pretty big deal. And we're looking forward to being able to release a press release on that stuff coming out in the near future.
Awesome.
But it's just, it's just lots of work. It's just nose to the grindstone, day in, day out, hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, and everybody working just shitloads of hours outside of their day jobs. Just to get this to where we are today. And I think, visually you can even look at where the pre-alpha was for release 12, which I think was last like March or April. There's even a big difference between that and what we've been showing off recently. Not the character models, like, people who don't look beyond the character models, which is a lot of people like MMORPG.com.
Hey, we played Project Gorgon. We can look beyond character models.
Yeah. Well, the thing you see is you just see a lot of people who look at that and they're like, well, the videos from 2-3 years ago have the same exact character models as the videos you're showing now. Therefore, ergo, you have not made any progress. So you're showing the same shit. It's like, I don't think you've paid attention to what we're showing in this zone. Like all the new original artwork, like all the new abilities, all the new VFX, like all this new stuff. Like, I don't paying attention to that. So
it's all new. It really is. Like, you guys see that picture in the background that I stole from the book cover? Yeah.
It's all new.
Nice.
So it's all brand new stuff. So, it's mostly just been, like I said, there was a good chunk of back end work, there was a good chunk of art creation, and then VFX stuff, and then the rest of it's just been like, rewriting some of the quest lines to get those in, writing dialogue for NPCs, and I'd say the big thing is just for like John and I, like just QA testing, like day in and day out, like every single, because we don't have a QA team, it's literally us. So it's like almost every single day, not necessarily every single day, but almost every single day, we're logging in and you're doing the same shit every day. It's like, okay, log in, create a character, pick the masteries, run up to the quest, make sure the quests work, make sure this works, make sure this works, make sure this, and that list only gets larger every time we do a patch. And eventually it's going to get to the point where we can't do it in 2 or 3 hours, and we're going to have to hire a QA team to come in and handle 6 to 8 hours of QA testing every single day to run through that list. But it's just been nose to grindstone and just getting the back end to where we want it to be, and then putting everything back in, making sure it's all working again. We added in, I'm trying to think of new things that we added in. We have guards now. We never had guards before.
Well, I can say from alpha testing with you guys, when I watched I missed the last few weeks, and then from watching the stream Wednesday, I'm like, whoa, they added that, they added that, they added that,
And I was just
like, oh.
I was going to ask, so, we had to take some steps back to make steps forward, but it's for the longevity of the game itself.
Yeah.
And then over the last few weeks, visually anyway, there's been a ton of strides in that department. Like, can
The
we?
hard-
Are we going to see more of that going forward? Like more faster progression toward a final product, or
Maybe. So let me dispel a slight myth about that, because a lot of what we did for a good 6 months was just stuff that was all back end stuff, so no one gets to
right?
see the front end, and it's very frustrating. You can ask Bobby about this. I get very frustrated when I'm not seeing front facing, client facing progress, because the marketer in me, because I'm the director of marketing for this project as well, the marketer in me is like going, I have nothing to share,
Right.
therefore we're not making progress. And that's not true, obviously, but that is the perception that happens there. So for a very long time, there was just so much work being done behind the scenes to get everything to the point where we could actually start adding all the visual and polish to things. And once that was able to happen, there's this like springboard effect where you've been getting that board just full of tension for the last 6 months while you've been getting everything ready. And then once it's ready to go, it's like, whoo, and you can you launch into that. And so there's going to be this several week to potentially month period of where there's going to be a lot of stuff getting added in. I would hesitate to say that we're going to maintain that same pace per se. I can say that we have a significant chunk of money at our disposal, and we are actively hiring. So I would urge people, if you are someone who is a senior programmer or a art lead with VFX and animation experience, or if you are I forget who all we're hiring for. It's stormhavenstudios.com/careers. We are actively hiring full-time positions. We're paying U.S. wages. Like these are good jobs. We're a pretty cool company to work for, and we're really, we're actively looking to hire people. And if we hire the people that we want to hire, then yes, you will see that same progress and that same pace continue. But that does kind of depend on when do we hire people, and how quickly can we onboard them, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Because there's only so much that we can do. I can say that without getting into financials and stuff, we are at a point now where, obviously we've been able to move most of the team to full time now.
Okay.
Which
awesome.
That's been something else that's been a boon to us, is to be able to get kind of everybody working, full time on the project as opposed to part time. And that's something that's only happened recently, like within the last, couple months, basically, of getting kind of everybody on board. And so that has helped speed things up considerably, and it will continue to help us move in the future. But definitely, forward progress depends on getting the right people and onboarding them as quickly as possible.
Okay. So I mean that makes sense. So like, there's certain steps that you have to take to further progression, but you need time, you need bodies, you need, industry experience to expedite that process. So I mean that makes sense.
So if I can expound on that a little bit better, there is actually a really interesting article that came out recently on the unfortunate reality of what's been going on at Naughty Dog over the last few years. Like they have a reputation for being one of the worst companies in the world in terms of the crunch issues. And as a result, senior technicians, I believe is it Kotaku? I forget how to pronounce their website. Like it was either them or Polygon ran this piece on Naughty Dog. Like one of the major issues that they're having with Last of Us 2 and why it's been pushed back from its original dates and everything is because they couldn't get any senior technicians that wanted to work on the project, because no one wanted to come work for them knowing their reputation for horrible hours and stuff. So they had to fill their staff with junior technicians to make things happen. And this is an area where I sometimes, Bobby and I have had discussions on this, because from a project manager standpoint, there is a certain truth to the more bodies you throw at something, the quicker something gets done. But when I say there's a certain truth to that, it's not a universal truth, because at some point, throwing inexperienced people or people who aren't doing the right things at something can actually slow you down. And so, it's one of those cases of where we get probably right now we're getting 150 to 300 applications per month. And yet we're not finding anybody to hire. And that's because we're getting a lot of just people who don't have the proper requirements, or they've never worked on an MMORPG. I mean, it's literally I'm getting applications. All they've ever worked on is mobile titles. And unfortunately, working on a mobile title doesn't give you enough experience to work on an MMORPG.
Right.
Like, you just don't have, like, your resume is not only just your resume, but your portfolio, your project reel. I can't see that you're actually capable of doing what we need done because you don't have any actual MMORPG experience. So it's this catch-22 of like, we've got money to hire and we're getting tons of applications, but the people we would like to hire, we're not getting applications from them yet. So it's just, it's a process of finding the right people.
Right.
That's important.
And if we can find the right people, then the project gets to move forward more quickly.
Well, that's awesome, man. So hopefully you guys will find those people, because I know you're going to have to get people, like you said, you're going to need to be able to hire people on a full-time capacity that actually have industry experience before you can hire those people that, might have the ability to do some of the stuff working, as a tier 1 or something like that. You've got to get the big dog first. And then that big dog will say, okay, I need 3 other junior technicians that can do these things while I'm working on the major. And we've
had great conversations with people with good industry experience, but it's just the timing hasn't worked out.
Right.
I was watching an interview with somebody today where they were talking about, like, they were trying to get this movie put together, and it was like every time they would get a director on board, the schedule of the actor would not work. And so the director would be like, well, if I'm going to have to wait for the actor to be ready and the actor is attached, like, I can't do this movie anymore. And suddenly you have these projects. Like, a good example is the Uncharted movie, which has been in development hell for like a decade. And it's had like 6 or 7 directors that have, come on board and then went away. And it's because at some point, it has nothing to do with creative vision. It has to do with people's schedules just aren't aligning.
Right.
And so we've had some really interesting conversations with people that we thought we were going to be able to hire, and then 2 months go down the road and suddenly the schedule's not working out anymore because they need to be doing this other thing instead, and they've got another commitment that came up. And it's like, these things happen, it's just, it's kind of crappy, but it's just the reality that we're in.
Right.
So
that's understandable. Well, so that kind of gets some of the background of what you guys have been up to the last year. So again, taking a step back to secure things for the future, there's been a lot of changes. I've seen it with my own eyes. Dev's seen it with his own eyes. And we can attest that there's been a lot going on. And I think in ways you guys have been pretty transparent about the whole process, at least within the Discord. And you're constantly dropping teasers and things like that. So it's pretty awesome.
I think there's a difference, though, between because especially if you take a look at the stage 2, which was April of last year until basically April of this year, even though we started publicizing things in February of this year, there was a 10-month span where we were just dead on social media, like nothing on social media, nothing public. And so there was this perception from the outside community that we had died as a project and that we were no longer around and that we had run out of money and that it was vaporware like everyone said it was going to be. And it's like, for those of you who were part of the alpha, no, we've had Wednesday night tests for a whole year. I spit out Discord in the alpha section of Discord. We're there every single day having discussions. Like, it's been very active within the alpha community, just not for the outside. So this illusion that we haven't been working on anything, on the one hand, it can be frustrating to people, but on the other hand, it's like, you should have joined the pre-alpha. Like, you're the one who chose not to join us. So you just going to have to sit there and wait until we're ready to show stuff. But yes, we have been hard at work on a lot of different things. And I appreciate that, like you guys have said, that you're able to see that progress and the transparency, because we are very transparent. It's maybe not necessarily with the outside public.
Yeah, but I still think, like, anybody who's been in the Saga of Lucimia Discord or been on the forums, you guys are active. And a dead game it's not like that. It's just you guys keep things behind the curtain because of certain things, because of past experiences, and also because there's a bit of a surprise for those people that do get invested and buy the actual game in the future. You want the element of surprise.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of, I just want to chime in for a minute. A lot of the games that are coming out, like MMORPGs that are made by indie teams, I like the information we get, but at the same time, I don't want everything. You know what I mean? I want to have a good chunk of spoiler-free stuff to figure out
So
myself.
yeah, if I can springboard off of that real quick,
Sure.
this is a catch-22. Something that's come up in a lot of the interviews we've been doing recently is like, no independent project out there has ever shut down their pre-order store. Like, we're the only one who's done that. Like, we
Right.
shut down our pre-order store for a year, and that was because we went out and we got investment money. The curse of crowdfunding is that you're forced to reveal all your cards. Like, that's the
Yeah.
only way you can keep money coming in.
Right.
And our benefit, so to speak, has been the fact that since 2014, myself, John, my brother, and then getting into 2015 and having Bobby and Richard come on board, and then 2016 with Eloa and Andrew and et cetera, we have people who go back as far as 2014 who have never gotten any money. They've been working on this for free in their spare time outside of a day job. So we have the benefit of not needing these $80,000 to $100,000 salaries to keep development moving forward on the project. So even though we haven't necessarily always worked full time, we've been able to always make steady forward progress. Whereas opposed to a project, I'm not going to pick any names out of the hat. Just point to any other independent project out there, and they're all running some form or another of a constant crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah.
Where they have to be doing these streams where they reveal stuff. Otherwise, they run out of money and they can't work on the game anymore.
And then when they don't, there's this backlash from the community because there's this mentality of, we need to see more. We need to see that our money that we've provided to you is still being applied toward the game.
Well, I would also say that, and again, I'm not going to name any names here, but I will say this. One of the reasons we've never had that complaint is because people have been able to access our product since 2015. Like, you've been able to log in and play the pre-alpha. And granted, the pre-alpha was always quarterly, but for the last year, we've been weekly tests on Wednesday nights. So by literally putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, like this is what we said we were going to do. This is what we do. Like, we actually are doing the things we said we were going to do. There's none of this, we'll get you in 6 months, and then 18 months later, no one still has access, and people are like, well, why don't we have access? And then you're continually hearing the developers talk about all these reasons why they don't have access yet. Like, we've had you in since 2015, and by getting people hands-on, we've been able to establish that trust factor with our community and that transparency that you were talking about, where we've built up a reputation now of being the company who gets shit done and does the things we say we were going to do. Over the years, which I think is, it's the best part for me is watching people like MMORPG.com who 5 years ago were like, you guys are going to fucking fail, like blah, 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 blah. And now they might not all have bought our game, but most of them have at least now said, they're like, we've got like Slapshot, Killer N, there's other people on the forums over there, just dropping some names, who are people who now, even though they're not actively supporting us, they're defending us to the rest of the trolls, being like, well, actually, these guys have done all these things that they said they were going to do, and they shut off the pre-order store, and they did this, and they did this. Yeah. And then getting to the point where we are now, where, having the deals that we've signed and all this other stuff that's going on, it's very nice to be in a place where we're being viewed as a legitimate game, despite having come into this with no previous gaming experience, and being considered one of the up-and-coming PvE games that people are looking forward to.
And that's awesome, because I've been on this little tangent here lately about it doesn't matter what the game is, it doesn't matter what company does it, everybody's going to have something to bitch about. I mean,
you have been on that train lately, bro.
Dude,
it's true.
It frustrates the shit out of me. It's like, let's let the guys at Stormhaven or whatever studio like do their thing, and then if we want to play the game, we play the game. You
like
know
it
what
used
I mean?
to be, back when we let people make games that we fell in love with, rather than dictating how they should make games because it needs to have a feature from a game we used to play 20 years ago.
Oh,
yeah, everybody's going to tell these studios how to make their game and how to play their game. Just let them make the game. If you don't like it, don't play it.
Ella and I did a Mondays and MMORPG episode a few months back where we talked, maybe not even a few months, maybe a couple months, where we talked about people should be celebrating the differences between games as opposed to trying to pigeonhole every
Yes.
single game into the same carbon copy because, well, I loved Final Fantasy 11 for these 10 reasons, and if you put these 10 things into your game, then I'm going to love your game. And it's like, but I don't want to be Final Fantasy 11 clone.
Right,
Like,
right.
I want to be Saga of Lucimia and have inspiration from like 10 different sources and have little
Yeah.
bits and things that I put into my game. I don't want to be an EverQuest clone. I don't want to be a Vanguard clone. I don't want to be a blah clone. Like,
Right.
obviously, these are references and these are inspirations, but I don't want to be a clone of that. So that's
Yeah.
and that's a dangerous place to be because I think that's one of the things that I saw as an outsider that happened to Shroud the Avatar was you had this rabid community who wanted Ultima Online 2.0, and when they didn't get that, they were like, "Fuck you!"
Well,
And it's like, but Shroud is still it's a fun game. Not everyone
Yeah.
likes it, but I like it. I think it's a good game, and the people who work on it are passionate. But because it wasn't Ultima Online 2.0, everyone wants them to die in a fire, and it's like that's bullshit.
and it's kind of like this, Ren. I always use bands as an analogy for this kind of content creating and game development and stuff like that. Let's say I was in a band and I looked up to Slayer as my influence.
Mhm.
If I did the same riff Slayer did, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, I don't want to use their same riffs. I want to be original. They can inspire me, yes, but it's got to have my own twist to it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
Like people need to be able to hear Slayer influence, but they don't need to hear Slayer.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah.
That's why, I'm I think I look at like at Pantheon as an example because everybody in the world is, everybody in the PvE world looking at Pantheon. But I think a lot of people have these rose tinted, like, it must be an EverQuest 1 copy or I'm not going to play it.
Man.
And it's
And
like, shut the fuck up and let them develop their own game.
As a hardcore, like, I'm excited for Pantheon, 100%. But I've always preached that, and I've actually repeated the same statement in a lot of our videos. Pantheon's not going to be EverQuest. Pantheon is going to be Pantheon. So just let just like I'm saying about Stormhaven, let you guys make your game. Let VR make their game. You know what I mean?
And if you guys want to see more about that, Def just did a video on that where he extrapolates on that, and you can check that out on our channel.
But yeah, I mean, I just get a little tired of that, and I can't imagine I just kind of can picture a bit of stress that comes with making a game.
So I'm the one who gets hit with it because I'm the public face of our company. The other guys don't deal with it like I do. But I'll get. It's not that bad right now, but I know where it's gonna go because I know what happened with my travel blog with my wife and I know where we got to the point where we were getting 500 comments a day, But I'll get a good 100 comments. I'll get 100 private messages a week on Discord from people who are telling me the things that I should do to make my game the best game ever. And it's just like I've learned over the years, I don't even reply to these people. Like I just literally don't even reply to them because it's people who are fantasy whitewashing, this stuff. And it's like, I don't think you've even read our fact page, like, because what you're saying doesn't even fit into the realm of what we're building. So why would we feedback is great if it fits into our vision for what we're building, but why would I do that just because you think it's the best thing ever? So it's not that it's stressful, but it definitely adds a layer of you just kind of have to shake your head and be like, God, people sometimes are just a little.
Well, and I know next week we're going to get into indie development and all this stuff.
Sure.
So I just can put myself in kind of into your perspective. And it's kind of like when you're into something and you want your friend to know about it. Like if I get into a show or a band or something, I'm going to tell Punk about it. You know what I mean? And I kind of look at that and making a game, like you have your own vision and imagination, and you can see the potential of community coming together, stuff like that. So I just, and that's why I say it seems stressful, because you have this vision that you're trying to deliver, but it's like you're trying to get there, and people are just so damn impatient.
Yeah, and I think it's just something I've learned, just over the years. I've got to kind of just try to ignore that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the ones you pay attention to are the people who, and this is a catch-22. People who have bought your product and support you, you definitely want to listen to them, but you also don't want to change your vision just because they're offering you lots of different ideas.
Yeah.
There are kernels of truth that all these people can help us, kind of further define certain mechanics and features. But at the end of the day, we alone dictate the features that are going into our game.
Right.
The ones you
Right.
really don't want to pay attention to are the window shoppers, which are the people on forums or wherever on the internet who are never going to buy your product because, oh, you're a subscription game, or oh, you're not PvP,
Yeah.
but yet they still want to give you unsolicited feedback on all the features that you need to put into your game to make it a better game, but yet they're never going to buy it in the first place. And those are the ones where you just have to say, you know what, whatever. Like, it's like the vegans who stand up. By the way, this is not meant to be offensive to vegans, so maybe I better rephrase
choked
this.
on
Be
my-
offended.
It's like the I have friends who are vegetarians and vegans, right? And they don't preach about it. But then there are the ones who go stand out front of a steakhouse and protest and scream about how meat is evil. And it's like, you're not going to change anyone's opinion. No one's going to stop going to that restaurant just because you're out front screaming. So you're not actually helping further your cause. All you're doing is wasting energy and my air. So, it's like there's the kind of the window shopper analogy is it's great to have fans, but the ones who are never gonna, you learn to just tune it out because they're never gonna be there. They're never actually gonna to support you or change their mind on anything at all.
It's the vegan asking for the vegan options at the restaurant that they never intend to eat at.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Like, you're a steakhouse, I'm never gonna eat there, but you should still carry those options anyway.
All right, so going back, circling back to like kind of doing your own thing and doing what you need to do. There's been some, like, I don't know if I formulated this in my own head or if I'd actually heard about this, but I know there was a certain particular pay scheme that you guys were planning on going with. You're a big fan of monthly subscription base, but I thought I had heard something about maybe also adding potential cash shop or subscription, like other things. So can you tell us a little bit about what the pay scheme is going to be like for Saga?
It's not set in stone. The plan A, and this is part of, I think 3 years ago was when we first started having this discussion with our community. And we made it public like a month ago with the topic of the week series, and all the media outlets were like, oh my God. And I'm like, actually, if you go back to there's actually an article on MMORPG.com where they picked up when we made the first announcement that we were talking about hybrid options like 3 years ago or something. Option A is subscription only, like a mandatory, like one size fits all. That's our preferred option. Option 2 is a tiered subscription model like what Netflix offers. So there would be 3 to 5 options. What you get with those options would vary. And I don't mean by access to the game. This is where we get into gray waters of what is or isn't a cash shop, because if we did an optional model like that, like any way we look at it, we've always talked about, even if we do this, the one size fits all, we were always going to include a monthly coin, in-game coin that you earn for your monthly subscription. That's always been the plan. We've talked about it for years with our community, always been out there public. And that coin store would allow you to do things like change the beard on your character and, do other things, character account services and so on and so forth. And that's always been the plan.
So just like a basic loyalty program.
Yes, it's a loyalty store. It's not a cash store. And this is where people get confused because they think coins and they think, oh, cash store. No, it's a loyalty store. So you would get those by paying your monthly subscription. It's a bonus. We would have account services in there and stuff like that. And then we broke it down further and said, well, if we went with the tiered option, then we could just kind of change how many coins you get per month based on what you want to pay to access the game. You still get access to the base game. Everyone still has access to that store. You just get a certain different amount of coins based on what you pay monthly for your sub. That would be option 2. And I don't think that violates any sort of cash shop because you're not allowing people to do microtransactions. It's
Well,
not like
it's better than, you know, paying a monthly sub, and then if you want to change your appearance, you got to spend extra money on top of your sub. You know?
correct. Which is the way like Lord of the Rings Online does it. Like you pay your monthly sub, and then like if you want this other stuff, you still have to pay more real money for it. And it's like, come on, guys! Like I'm paying you $15 a month. Like you should be giving me, like you used to, you should be giving me access to 100% of the stuff, but they don't. So we would like to take a step back from that and say, you know, we could have that loyalty store, but rather than allowing people to pay like actual real cash for it, it would just be tied to some sort of a monthly sub, whether that's a mandatory one size fits all sub or a mandatory tiered sub. That's our options A and options B.
I think that's super cool too, right? And I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I just think that's super cool because from a business perspective, right, with these cash shops, we've got a couple of friends that we used to play MMOs with, and we would jump into a new MMO, and they would be like, you know, whack, you know, here's $200. I want this cosmetic, that cosmetic, this XP boost, this junk, you know, story, yada, yada, yada. We'd play for 2 weeks and they'd quit.
Yep.
And with your model, it's kind of like encourages people to keep a subscription going. And if
it's the long-term thing.
Yeah.
It's like want to accrue the coins to get the really cool stuff, then you want to continue playing over long periods of time. You know, and again, nothing is set in stone. We don't know what the market's going to do over the next 2 years. Somebody could come out with a brand new hybrid model that blows everyone out of the water, and we go with that option, you know. And then we very publicly, we have talked about this. It's in the discussion in our forums. We've also talked like Plan C. Plan C would be the ESO model, which is a buy to play with an optional sub, where we still have that loyalty store in there if you're paying into the optional sub, and then just if you didn't pay for that optional sub, you just don't have access to the loyalty store, and you just have access to the game. Like, no harm, no foul. Like, you can still play the game just by buying it, and you can play it for free after you purchase it. But then if you want loyalty perks, then you pay a monthly sub. Like, we would look at that without, and again, this would be without any sort of microtransactions, which is the distinction, because ESO still allows you to, you know, a la carte, you know, purchase.
Yeah, and I noticed
things.
EverQuest went into that model too. You pay your sub, and then you get your 1,500 currency, you know.
But then you can buy more.
But then you can spend more.
Because
like
I
that
totally,
restriction though, too.
by the way, I totally did that the last time we played the progression server, EverQuest 1 progression server. We'd been playing for a couple of months, and I was like 300 coins short of getting like my mount. And I didn't want to wait until the end of the month to get my extra 500 coins or whatever. So I literally just spent $5 to get the 300 coins I needed and got my mount that day.
Nice.
And you know, I've spent money in cash shops, and I have no problem with cash shops. They work for certain games. We're choosing not to have that as our primary source of income.
And it's a difficult choice too, because it's like a really broad gray area, because you can take one step in one direction and you know it's not offering value, and then you take a wrong step in the other direction and you're giving people pay to win options. So it's like you got to be careful where you're at, and not just with how you execute it, but the perception of it. Because if you've got a cash shop, I think one of the immediate questions is, well, is it pay to win? And like, there's no true black and white definition of what is pay to win.
Because here's the thing,
especially in MMORPGs, you know, some people think pay to win might, you know, you got to earn your gear, you know, your appearance.
That's what I was just gonna say. Because we've had community members who have talked to them, because I've been very open about the fact that I like that aspect of EverQuest 1.
Yeah.
You look like what you earned. But I also have spent a boatload of money in Star Wars: The Old Republic and Lord of the Rings Online to make my character look fucking badass.
I look pretty badass in Guild Wars 2, man.
Yeah, and I like having that option. So I understand that completely. But at the same time, it's like I can go back to that and be like, I'm torn because on the one hand, I love being able to customize my character, but on the other hand, I really love that whole I earned it, so I looked like what I earned. And the moment you allow someone to buy an item in to buy a cosmetic item in a cash shop, in the eyes of many, you have now crossed that threshold of pay to win, because now I
Yeah.
can look cool based on how much money I want to spend,
Yeah.
and therefore I am paying to win the coolness factor of the
Yep.
game. I
And
get that.
I'm kind of with you. I'm torn on it, but I don't know if the game's done this before or where I've gotten this idea, but like maybe if there was just one cosmetic item where that, like people can show their support, whether it may be like a cloak. Guild Wars 2 comes to mind, and the backpacks and the gliders and stuff, like you can get some of those items from raiding or fractals and certain events in the game, but like maybe there's a line of items where you can add a little pedaz to your tune, but not having in the cash shop like a whole suit of armor you can buy.
Yeah.
I
There's
don't know.
also like the Final Fantasy 14 option, which is where people can buy gifts for each other, like little cosmetic gifts for each other. And it's like, is that really so nefarious? Is that really such a big deal to allow players to spend $2 to $3 to buy something cool for their streamer friend? Like, I don't really think that's a big deal, but for some people it is a big deal. So it's like we have to, like I said, that's why I said we've not set anything in stone. We've been public about what we want our options A and B to be, and
Well,
then
I can
what
set
option C
something in
would be.
stone for you. Let Stormhaven make their game.
And I think we'll have a better, like I said, we'll have a better idea probably 6 months out from launch, what exactly we're going to be doing. For now, I can tell you, those are like our primary options, which they've been the same options for the last 3.5 years or so. So that hasn't really changed.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think you've played Warframe before. We were big advocates of Warframe, and I think they've had one of the best cash shops, if you will, that I've ever experienced. Because
purely cosmetic.
It's purely cosmetic, but there are some like you've got your credit boosters, but it's not like above and beyond. You've got experience boosters, but it's a small percentage. It's basically, I don't know. I feel like you get something for your money. Like, it's not like you're going in there and you're spending $10 to get a 3-day experience booster like you do in some games. You're spending $10 and you've got platinum that you can spend to get more weapon slots, which you can get in the game anyway. You get experience
I thought
boosters.
the coolest thing was like you could take your pistol and like depending on, you could just buy all these cosmetic options for your pistol, but it didn't change the damage of the pistol. And I was like, that's actually like every little thing that I got in the game. My pistol, my rifle, my sword, my suit, like all of that could be customized, and I could customize it with in-game credits, or I could customize it with real cash.
And
so they gave you that option.
And the way they did that too is that it also, the economy, it encouraged community, right? You would be meeting with people, and these people would go out and farm the things.
You could exchange your platinum too. So
exactly.
you could trade a player platinum for gear, which kind of adds to a pay to win element, and some people will argue with that. But I also say it's the same way, because you can find that gear and get the platinum from another player. So is it really pay to win when you put in the work, the effort? You had to get that platinum. We have a guy in Battle Axe Theater who was able to raise 2,000 platinum, which is a pretty good chunk over the course of a month from just playing hardcore.
That's a good chunk.
And I played Trove, and I had a subscription for a year and never paid once, because I just did grinding in the game and exchanged currency for monthly tokens. So like there's execution, and I almost feel like in modern day MMORPG making money wise, like microtransactions are always going to be the money maker, at least compared to the subscription.
It's ridiculous. I don't think most people realize the numbers, but it's ridiculous how easy the money comes in on a free-to-play title with a cash shop. Now, granted, it's always going to be, the whales are going to support the bulk of it. But there was even, I did a case study, and off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me right now. There was a Facebook mobile game that only lasted for or not a Facebook mobile, but back when Facebook still had like the Mafia war games and stuff like 7-8 years ago. There was
guys.
yeah, that kind of stuff. There was a Facebook game that over the course of like 5 years, they had something like 11 million players, and it was something like 50,000 transactions were taking place on a daily basis. So you look at 11, it was something like 5 million dailies and 50,000 transactions, and the average transaction was like 40 cents or something. So a very minuscule amount, but when you add up 40 cents times 50,000
Yep.
transactions every single day on top of all this other stuff, like they were making, tens of millions every single month off of these little 40-cent transactions, because that stuff adds up. It's so easy to make money with free-to-play cash shop microtransaction route. But the downside to that, which this is something that came up, I don't know if this is in your questions or not, but I'll bring it up here. We had some questions from people about why the current pre-order tiers don't have any in-game items attached. There were some complaints from people during our first stream that like, oh, there's not enough options in your higher tiers. Why aren't there enough options? And I was like, because if you look at what we're offering,
go ahead.
What's that?
I said I love the new options, but go ahead.
Well, if you look at what we're offering in our pre-order tiers, it's all out of game, and it's all about beta keys and buddy passes and getting your friends to play.
Yes, it's reminiscent of like early 2000s era gaming. It's
not cash shop. It's not cosmetic items. And the reason for that is because I don't want my art team having to make a bunch of useless shit that people are going to wear for a day and then throw away. Like that's a waste of engineering. It's a waste of man hours. It's a waste of our money.
Waste of everybody's time.
Wasted everybody's time and money. So I want my art team creating assets for the game world so that when you log in, you're like, what is that over there on the other? Is that a castle? I need to go there. Like, and then you get in there and it's like, oh my God, what's that? And can I click on that? And like, I want my team creating those things for the in-game experience,
right?
Not stupid cash shop cosmetic items. So I was kind of laughed that off when somebody brought that up in the stream. They're like, well, why aren't there any like in-game things in your pre-order tiers? And it's like, because that's not what our pre-order tiers are about. This is a community-based game. Group-based game. That's what those are about.
And I love it because like I went to this whole pre-order thing back when the whole new pre-order concept started to change, where you were getting these like in-game items and crap, and I was going through these MMOs and pre-ordering, and with all of those, when the game went live, you had beta keys,
backpack, and you're talking about early
I'm talking about like just before everything started to transition. And now it's like, because you're not actually physically pre-ordering your copy in order to give like a retailer an idea of the demand, these companies have to entice people to pre-order by getting stupid in-game stuff, like you said, that they wear for 30 minutes and then they go throw it in the trash.
There's no point.
Stupid. Well, in essence of time, because we are at about a 2-hour mark.
We got more stuff to go through.
I've just had
I just want to get one thing in, back to what Ren was saying.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, bro.
Well, Ren said something that kind of sparked my gears.
Oh no.
When you see something over there, and and we've been in alpha testing, and I hope I can say this, Ren, but the statue and the bridge in White Mist Foothills, bro, like I saw that from a distance, and the travel time to get there,
I think it's actually on your list towards the end, is talking about scope of the zone size. But go ahead.
Yeah. We're about to get into all this, but I just gotta say, like, that is it's just something you don't get a lot of these days. So anyway, I'm shut
glad
up
you
so
like
we can
that.
move on.
And that's actually, if you look at the cover of the book, that's actually that's the piece of art that we have on the cover of Echoes of the Past. That's the piece of concept art that inspired this zone. So if you actually take a look at the book cover, you're seeing a lone adventurer standing on a hill, looking, and it's slightly different in our world because
that was me, bro.
We can't have all.
He was the lone adventurer because he couldn't find anybody.
I kept getting lost.
We couldn't have all the waterfalls and stuff in there at the moment, but we tried to recreate that, and Cody did a really good job with that bridge. So yeah, there's some, and that's that's a centerpiece. And that goes back to which I talked about in the stream. landmarks, because you don't have a mini map, landmarks are very important in the zone. So we've
Right.
definitely made sure that all the zones that you're going to be in, there will be landmarks to each one of these zones that are the focal point of each one of these places, which will help you navigate even without a map.
Maybe that's something you should have in the quote cash shop, a compass. Because
Who's gonna sell a compass like an essential item?
dude, I have no sense of direction. I would spend my coin on that. I'm telling you right now.
Oh,
All right, well, I know you got questions, so we should probably power through before I completely
yeah. So
off-road this thing.
I have a burning question, and Def kind of and I talked about this, and we didn't really know how to bring it up. And I'm just curious, what's up with the new logo? It's very retro looking.
My original source of inspiration for all this was Dungeons and Dragons and Forgotten
Mhm.
Realms and stuff, so I just kind of went that direction with things.
Okay.
And if you think about it, it's more about Saga of Lucimia as a brand, as opposed. This is not, it's not meant to represent just the MMORPG. This is the brand logo. So if you can imagine how back in the day, like the Dragonlance logo is plastered on anything that's Dragonlance. The Forgotten Realms logo is on anything that's Forgotten Realms. For us, the Saga of Lucimia is an IP.
Okay.
So that's what we wanted to recreate, was that sort of stamp that signifies that this is meant to be something that's going to be an epic adventure, whether it's a book, a tabletop, MMORPG, etc.
Gotcha. Cool. And then it makes sense now that you explain it like that, because now I'm thinking, the Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms, anything from that, like, whether it's a player manual that you're reading, or a campaign rather, or it's the actual books, or it's
just a nice big
game
header image that goes across the
Yeah.
top.
That makes sense.
And then you can have the name of whatever it is, Tears of the Wrath or whatever, Echoes of the Past, so to speak.
Cool. All right, so that explains it to me. Now, are you guys going to increase the DPI or anything like that for the actual website or anything? Because
yeah, there's some places where it's small. So if you look at like what, you're gonna don't talk to Bobby about this stuff because he'll rant about it. This is why, if you look at Dungeons and Dragons, when they do the small version, it's DND, and there's a reason they have it 2 letters when it's a small icon area, because it looks better when it's just 2 letters.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we're working on that right now to kind of figure out a way to represent that logo in an icon format.
Okay.
But there's nothing that we've finalized yet, so
Well, that's
we're
cool.
aware.
That
I'm aware
answers-
because I have to hear it all the time.
Hopefully, I didn't offend. It's just it was new. Like one day it was like Saga of Lucimia, and then the next one it was like Saga. Oh, that's Saga of Lucimia.
Yeah, it looks weird it doesn't look that great on the website, so
Okay, gotcha.
it's a work in progress.
Well, it's also something I'm always interested in. Is the why behind
Yeah, I love that. now
any
that
any
it's
game
been
development.
explained.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it just makes so much sense now. Before it was like maybe he was just paying homage to the retro, like classic style, like when you bought the box game and it had But then now actually seeing it and then him explaining it in terms of
No, I really looked back at all of the early like TSR stuff with Dragonlance, and then what I really looked at was like the Forgotten Realms. But then I was looking at like anywhere you look, that logo showed up. It's on the book covers, it's on the tabletop covers, it's on any of the computer game covers. It was on anything that was related to Dungeons and Dragons, and it was whether it was Dungeons and Dragons itself, they had their Dungeons and Dragons logo that's stamped on everything, and then there was the individual like IP logos that were stamped on everything. And that really, for me, I looked at that and went, well, that's essentially what we're creating, is this universe. It's not just the game, it's the game, the books, the tabletop, and all this other stuff. So that was a really good source for me to look back to. I mean, even Star Wars did that to some degree, because the Star Wars logo is on everything, even when it's, whether it's the expanded universe books or the new stuff, the Star Wars logo is on everything.
And it's iconic, like you can recognize it. Like if you're just walking through a Books A Million or Barnes and Noble, and you just see this and you're like, oh, I didn't know Tim put out a new book. And because you recognize that logo and you enjoyed that other book so much, or you've played the game and you didn't know there was a novel, and now you're walking through the bookstore and you're like, oh, there's books. I remember Magic the Gathering. Like that's how I discovered Magic the Gathering books, because I saw the MTG on there. And then you flip it over, Wizards of the Coast, after they bought them and whatnot.
After they bought TSR, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was like yeah. So I get that. All right, so let's move on with a little bit. We've got a couple questions. I've knocked a few of these out since we're kind of running short on time here, and I want to make sure we get to Omega's question. Oh shit, I got a lot more questions here than I thought.
Time to power through.
All right, bro.
Well-
Def, ask your question, man.
Okay, yeah. So Ren, I haven't read your book because you don't have an audio book. We went through that. And I noticed you mentioned this several times. There's two versions of elves. Not elves, but anyway, my main question is, will there be any fantastical beasts? Like, will we ever encounter giants or dragons or drakes?
This is why you need to read the book, but yes.
Well, bro, you don't have an audio book.
That's not reading. But yes, dragons in particular are very important in terms of the elder races. They're mentioned in Volume 1. The stage where I'm at in Volume 2 draft, we're digging into the background of where did humans come from and what caused their island to, what caused the catastrophe that sent them across the seas, and where did the dragons go, and where did the other elder races go? Because we only know about, really, the humans only are aware of like the Elenhai, Eldenai, and the Dwerhe. Now there are mention of dragons, and there's, for example, in the gardens, I believe it's in the Poet's Garden in Finglas Mirror, there's a giant dragon. Maybe it's a multiple dragon. I don't remember now. That's a bad thing for the author of the series not to remember. There's a major fountain in the middle of the gardens. I think it's multiple dragons now that I think about it, but it's a dragon fountain. So dragons are definitely part of myth and legend, but there are other creatures as well. So giants, dragons, that kind of stuff, absolutely. We can also say minotaurs. Minotaurs are in there. There's a whole dungeon.
It's
There's
indicative of a true high fantasy, then.
Yes.
Okay.
To some degree, like we don't have hobbits, we don't have dwarves, in that traditional sense, but we do have a lot of the other classical creatures like giants and dragons and minotaurs and so on and so forth.
Militus ain't gonna play this game. It's no dwarves.
Yeah, we've had some people who the Dwerhe are definitely.
I'm a big dwarf fan too, so.
I always play dwarves. I always play a dwarven tank or elven ranger, but the Dwerhe are essentially dwarves. It's just a different way of portraying dwarves. So in the lore of World of Warcraft, dwarves, and I didn't know this until I played Classic, because I never played World of Warcraft, so I wasn't aware of the lore. But then I was reading the lore and I'm like, oh, dwarves were actually rock elementals, and I was like, that's what the Dwerhe are. Like the Dwerhe. My Dwerhe are, that's what they are. They're stone elementals. They're earth elementals.
Okay.
So if you think about it that way, they're just dwarves before they had physical, like,
before the
flesh
curse
bodies.
of flesh, yeah.
Right.
So that answers my question. There is some high fantasy.
Sounds like there's a lot of high fantasy in it.
Magic element.
I was pretty high when I wrote it, so. Definitely some high fantasy in there.
You heard it here, folks.
All right, so that kind of now we know what to expect in terms of like what we'll see periodically in the universe. This one's question came from Omega Contagion, who's in chat right now, and it's a pretty extensive question, and I can't get to it right now because it's in Discord, and I'm capturing from Discord, but.
Would
To
you
summarize
like me to read it?
You can read the whole question, but I want to kind of summarize it real quick. So what Omega wants to know is like what constitutes as epic gear? How is epic gear going to be obtained? What kind of longevity is like epic gear going to have? Just like anything that you can talk about with regard to like what would make gear epic, because I believe you talked about how gear was going to set people apart in the game.
In my mind, I'm going back to early EverQuest for gear. So if you get a piece of relic gear, it's meant to it is meant to last you months, potentially a year or more.
Okay.
That's typical relic gear. Now, raid gear, like if you get to the cap and you are raiding, and that's what your focus is, that's going to be tricky, because if you have any sort of gear progression, the moment that the next expansion comes out, you have to make the next tier better, right? Otherwise, people are like, well, why do I want to go out? We're trying to get away from that to a degree. Now, the caveat to this is I wrote all this as a D&D campaign, as a book series, long before it ever became something that we were going to turn into a book. And this or before we turned it into a game, and this kind of works to my favor. Volume 1 is all about collecting relic gear and those things, but we bring magic back into the world. So we could just throw everything out and say, well, now all that relic gear you earned is worthless, and now you got to go out and earn new magic gear. But I would personally like to see us find a way to take some of the exceptional pieces of gear from Volume 1 and have those suddenly magic comes back to the realm, and these items now become magical. Therefore, they now have a use that can continue on into the new expansion, because it's like magic comes back, and instead of now running out of charges, now this is an item which has its own. It's now being able to have an endless supply of energy once again, and therefore this item will evolve. But that would be raid level quality, not dungeon quality, not crafted gear, but raid gear.
Well, that's pretty fucking cool.
Well, that's theory. Please understand that that's theory only, because we have not finished designing any of that, because we got to make sure that Volume 1 does what we want it to do before we start.
Right.
Now, when we talk about Volume 1 and 2 book-wise versus Volume 1 and 2 of Saga the game, are we talking expansions or major content patches, are you thinking?
No, it's expansion. Okay. It will, we're looking at probably 2 years after launch 1, we'll launch Volume 2, and that's going to be an actual expansion, which will bring the Elenhai, Eldenai, and Dwerhe as playable races. We will unlock those 3 starting areas, and then some additional content around that. I don't think we'll be adding any new land masses to the world. We'll just be continuing to adventure on the same continent, with what's going on that continent, and then land masses will come in Volume 3.
Okay. See, that's cool. I love that, because I mean, we talked about the world design and whatnot when we did a stream in the past, and I'm a big believer that the world exists. So, like, why are we not trying to progress content within the world that does exist? And I can understand adding new continents and things like that to a game, because maybe, it was never explored before. But it's been like with World of Warcraft, it's a routine thing. Like every expansion, there's a new zone.
Got to have a new landmass, 20 new zones. And
I find it kind of annoying. Like, I thought Cataclysm was kind of refreshing to go back and see the stuff that I had started doing, 7 years prior. Now it's different, and they've revamped it, and they've added flying. Like, that was all cool for me, and it made sense, because it's like, if you read the books, and if you think of yourself as an actual individual in World of Warcraft, these other places exist. Why do you have to wait for an expansion for it to exist? Because it's not like it was unexplored. I mean, the whole Lich King thing is pre World of Warcraft. We knew the Northrend existed. But we had to wait 2 expansions to get it. Anyway,
I just think there's a lot more that people can do with reusing your existing zones and continuing to have adventures. I think Lord of the Rings Online did a good job of this too, with some of their volume stuff, where they brought you back to the old zones and you were having new adventures in places you'd already been.
Right.
So I like that aspect of it as well. Plus, we're not dumping the whole world map on people at the launch of Volume 1. It's the bottom half of the map, and then we'll be going back to the content patch thing you were talking about. Every 3 or 4 months we'll be adding another new zone, another new dungeon, and a new zone, and a new dungeon, and so on and so forth, filling up the rest of that world map as we get to Volume 2. And then when we get to Volume 2, we may have all of the world map unveiled. We might not. Right. But then there's additional stuff, like I said, new starting areas, and then we have some of the underground kingdoms of the Dwerhe to explore as well, and some of the higher peaks where the dragons used to be. So there's quite a bit on that landmass of Lucimia to focus on for at least the first 4 or 5 years of gameplay.
Okay, and then that's awesome. And there's always, as technology progresses, there's always the chance, for dynamic content to be added too. So, not to say that you guys will. I'm just saying, like, the capabilities are there. AI is improving every day. So, Dev, speaking of land masses, you had a question regarding land masses.
Was that the last question on the gameplays?
Yeah, I'm
notes?
skipping around a little bit here.
I
That's
was about to
fine.
say, well, dude, I saw that you marked out a question that I really wanted to ask. So maybe we could just
ask it.
okay.
Just do it. Just do
Okay,
it.
so you mentioned in the stream Wednesday that mastery levels will go up to level 100, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so my question is, up to level 100, will that mastery get a new ability? And second question, will some of those abilities be quest locked, quest walled? Would you have to
Yes, to
do a
both, I
quest?
think.
Okay.
Your first question is, do you get abilities? Do you get new abilities as the mastery levels up? Is that what your question was?
Yeah, like, well,
Like
it's
an
all the
epic
way up.
ability at level 100. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh.
That's maybe quest walled or locked behind a quest or
But
something like
that's
that.
the second part of your question. The first part of your question had something to do with leveling.
Well, I noticed, like, in the stream, you get like an ability at 1, 15, so on and so forth. Will that continue all the way up to 100 levels? So where
There's basically 6 to 15, I think, at the moment. In between 6 and 15 abilities within any given mastery line.
so you could essentially get these new abilities and then add those new abilities to your bar and
Yes.
kind of just
Yes.
like
Now some of
build.
those, if you just look at the stream, like I've played life magic, I've played fire magic, I've played spirit
Uh-huh.
magic, etc. Right now we only have 3 abilities in each line.
Okay.
In the design documents, which we're pulling abilities from, there's I think all the supplementals have 6, and all combat have 12 at the moment, and then we're going to be adding some more as we get deeper into things. And it's basically like every 10 levels or so you'll get a new ability within a mastery line, and sometimes it'll be every 5 levels, because it starts getting really slow. Like after you get to like level 20 in a mastery, it gets really slow to get to 25. It takes even longer to get to 30, longer to get to 35, longer to get to 40,
Because it's easy to get started with something, but it's harder to master it.
Yes. So you get your first, let's say you get your first 6 abilities really quick, like within the first couple days, 3 or 4 sessions of gameplay, you'll get your first kind of defining abilities within a mastery line. But then the rest of them, like the really cool abilities, like the ones that are like group buffs and AoEs and all this other stuff and self hastes, and that stuff takes time and effort to get to. And this ties into the other part of your question.
Okay.
Only about 15 to 25% of the abilities and masteries that you can find in the game are going to be available in town on a trainer. The rest of them are out in the wild, and you either have to find the trainers or find the abilities, do the quests. So some are quest locked, some are locked behind faction walls, some are locked behind combination walls. So you need these 3 abilities at this skill level to unlock that, or you need these 4 masteries at this level to get that, which is kind of something that I think Project Gorgon did that a little bit with, like, I think the Druid or something. Or I remember because I played it with you guys for a while. I think it was Ice Mage. Like you had to get fire to a certain point before you could get ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
there
kind of
is-
locked. Yeah.
There is an element of that for some things. Well, you will need to get certain things to a certain point before you can unlock other things. So
I love that.
There are faction walls, there are quest walls, there are
Okay.
combination walls, and exploration walls.
And this isn't going to be presented outright in the game, like in
No.
terms of, it's not going to be like you need level 15 fire magic and level
Nope.
30
You're gonna have
ice
to-
magic to get wind magic.
You're gonna have to figure it all out. Like we're not telling. It's like the Jedi thing. in Galaxies. Like no one
Hell
knew
yeah.
until they figured it out. So it's for us. You're not gonna know until you figure it out. So
Yeah.
On
Well,
this topic, go ahead.
One more side question. I noticed some of the runes you can get. And you mentioned they would drop off humanoids and so on and so forth. Will those be like named humanoids or boss mobs?
just at the moment, any humanoid can drop the relics that you use for casting magic. That's our way of we're kind of cheating a little bit because magic is way rarer than that in the book. But
Okay.
because we have to make the game playable, this is the way that we do that.
Yeah, we've
so
talked about this a lot with Bobby. So.
Humanoids, all humanoids can drop them at the moment, and quests will offer you them as well. But yeah.
Okay.
Dan
I'm
Arnold
done.
says, how long do you anticipate it taking to get 100 mastery in a skill?
How often do you play? I personally, as an example, World of Warcraft Classic launched. I played 3 nights a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I played about 2 to 3 hours each session. I did not get to level 60 until the end of January. So it took me about 6 months to get to level 60 on my warrior. Other people were level 60 in 10 days after Classic launched. So I can't answer that question for you because it honestly is going to depend on how often do you play. Are you a no-lifer who plays 18 hours a day? You might max out in 2 weeks.
That's hurtful.
Or if you're like,
Dude,
if you're like me,
I respect that answer so much. Like it's the game's always gonna be there.
Yes.
So it I don't know.
If you're like me, I play, I might play 10, 15 hours a week on an MMORPG. Like I said, I'll play 3 nights a week, and I've done that for years. I play very regularly Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. It's only been the last month that I'm not because I'm just way too busy with Saga stuff. But traditionally playing 3 nights a week like that, I'll get in about 10 hours a week. If I play a Saturday or Sunday session, I might bump up to like 15. It traditionally takes me, 6 months before I level a character to max in pretty much every game. So I'm fairly casual by nature. So it just depends. Are you a casual player or are you a hardcore player?
Yeah.
And that's a good answer too, because if the game is designed properly, it's not about that rush to end game. It's about the entire journey.
Yes.
And that's what's missing from MMO culture right now that we used to have in the late 90s and early 2000s was you were at work and you were excited to come home and do an adventure. You weren't excited to come home and try to get the next 5 levels every night until you can get max level in Raid.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example real quick. I've talked about this in the stream I did on Sunday. I have played probably 20 different builds combinations over the last few months testing the game. I can get to level 10 in a given mastery within about 20 to 25 minutes. I've done it in as little as 17, depending on the build. And that's me not talking, just going out and just grinding mobs and just going, all out. And I can get there in about 20, 25 minutes. I can get to 10 in a given mastery. Now, 10 to 20, that takes several hours and it depends on what you're playing. It can be from several hours to kind of dozen or so, just kind of depending on how you're playing and everything else to get from 10 to 20. And it gets even more beyond that for the 20 to 30, and I think somewhere Bobby's probably got a formula that shows how many hours of continual gameplay that someone would need to play to reach 100 in a given mastery. But it's a ridiculous amount of like hundreds of hours. And then when you factor in that you've got literally dozens of masteries for any given character, you're talking thousands of hours of gameplay to potentially max out a character, in terms of getting all of your masteries to 100. It's not going to be something that you can do
overnight.
I mean, yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. Some people might be able to do it in like 3 months or something. Like the people, those crazy people who do speed runs, like who's reading the news today. People are already doing speed runs of Doom Eternal in 90 minutes. Like,
yeah,
why? Like,
Rip?
Dude,
what's the point?
You can't control that. There's going to be people that find spots in your games, and
you're going to have someone like me who plays 10, 12 hours the first a day for the first few weeks or even month or so that it's out, and we're going to push that. And I'm hoping I can gravitate away from that because that's been my mentality for like the last 10 years because of World of Warcraft. But you're going to have those types of players. I mean, let's just face it. That's
we can't get around it. But we also are not designing the game for the people.
So because of those types of people, though, are you going to have like, is it going to be like a constant scaling, or is it going to be something more like, I mean, I'm sure there's a curve in there somewhere as you get higher, but is it going to be a drastic curve like we see in Korean MMOs?
Yeah, it's a very drastic curve. So originally we had hell levels. Like we actually went back to hell levels from EverQuest 1. And we took those out and instead just it's a curve. But yeah, it's a big curve, and it's a very
Okay.
steep curve, and that's because we want the impression to be that there are hell levels, even though there's really not, because we kind of took those out of the equation, but there still is this
See Omega.
very steep curve.
Okay.
So like I said, those first 10, 15 levels in a mastery go really quick. You can get to 15 in about 2 hours of gameplay. Like I said, in about 20 minutes, you can get to, this is my experience. In about 20 minutes, you can get to 10, and it takes you a couple hours to get to 15, and then takes you
Yeah.
even more time to get to 20. So it's a pretty steep curve.
Wow.
So I know you had a, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No.
All right, so I just want to kind of, we're gonna do one last question here and wrap things up because we're at the 2.5 hour mark. But I forgot I was gonna say something, but I forgot what it is. So, Def, you had one last question that's kind of.
I
in
think it
line
was
with,
about scope of the zone, right?
yeah. So, in terms of growth, I think this is an appropriate topic to discuss. So, go ahead and ask him your question.
Well, let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I noticed something like what I was saying earlier when I get to the bridge. Okay, I see that bridge from a distance. And we start out so far in White Mist Foothills, and it's a huge zone. And part of my question is every zone going to be that massive? And is there any kind of run speed or traveling advantages that will occur? Maybe not right at launch, but later on in the game. I do know there's speed potions and stuff like that. But you know, when you're traveling, at least from Alpha, I've noticed it takes a good amount of time to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Especially with the Adric inhibitor.
Yeah, will there be any like other classes like utility masteries or anything of that nature
Yep.
in the future that will increase that, where you
This
would
is
want to
this is
have
where
said person in group?
Adric's like, I did nothing.
So
It's
yeah,
not
you
my
did,
fault.
Adric.
It's all your fault, man. So this goes back to we have lots of inspiration sources, but this goes back to EverQuest for the inspiration source. There will be, I hesitate to say classes because we don't have a class-based game, but there are abilities within mastery lines which people will come to define as the bard, as an example. There are abilities in the game which can enhance your speed, which is one of the reasons we decided we're not going to ever include mounts in our game, because we want people relying on each other for getting around the world, not a static object. Because the moment you put mounts in, the world gets small. People don't talk to each other anymore. People don't ask each other for buffs. There's like, fuck it, I'll get on my mount and I'm gone. Like I don't need your speed buff. So it's definitely speed buffs from other players. There's definitely potions.
Druid circles.
There will be. This is not in the alpha yet, but we're working towards this. We have a kind of a unique system that's a cross between like the EverQuest 1 Druid Rings and Wizard Portals and the World of Warcraft Portal Stones, where you have these places that you can get to which require multiple people there to use. People have to have gone there first to be able to use it in the first place. But those will be in places throughout the world to help kind of get to the dungeon when you need, because we even though we want the world to be big, we also have to realize that people need some quality of life features to help them. You've only got 2 to 4 hours to play. You don't want to have to be spending 3 hours getting somewhere.
Right.
But you might have to spend 3 hours the first time you go there.
But
the second time,
you to take everything in.
Yes, immersion is a very big important part of this. So, the scope of the zone you were just talking about, you asked a question about, is this, so part of what we're doing with stage 3 is we're testing right now. We're testing what is the performance like in a zone of this scope. This is the biggest zone we've done to date. How is the performance going to hold up? What kind of draw calls are we going to have when we've got 150 people in the zone and all these VFX going on and all this other stuff. So that's one of the big reasons for stage 3 is so that we can start to stress test these things and make sure that the performance is good. If the performance holds up, then this is kind of like the gold standard of what the base size of a zone is going to be for us. Yes. Now we also have zones that are bigger than this. Now we don't have the engineering technology to make a seamless game. So what we're trying to do is recreate that experience with zones that are big enough that you still get that feeling of this is a massive place and I can see that thing over on the horizon. I want to get there, but it's going to take me 45 minutes to run there, because our zones are big enough right now. If you try to run from one corner to the other diagonally, it will take you about an hour, and that's assuming you don't get into any combat.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make these zones fairly big,
which I love, and the main reason I was asking, because if they're raiding and in game and dungeons and stuff, it's cool to know that there will, you mentioned EverQuest 1 as a reference point or an inspiration point. It's kind of cool if there was a mastery, that could implement some kind of summoning or portal or something like that,
And the other thing I would like to point out about the scope of the zones too is that a lot of times when you talk about level-based games, the scope of a zone is like 5 levels, a range of like 5 levels. We're actually doing a range of 50. So, if you think about where the starting village is in the White Mist foothills, like when you get out, you're going down through that Newbie Valley. That's all like 1 to 5, and then 5 to 10, and then you get deeper into the forest. That's 10 to 15, and a little deeper is 15 to 20, and then a little beyond that is 20 to 25, and then 25 to 30, and then you go on the other side of the map, and it's 30 to 40, and then you hit the peninsula, and it's 40 to 50. So there's this huge range when you talk about the time it takes to progress through. I think this was part of the question too, if I remember reading it real quick. Are we intending?
Yeah.
Yes, that was the part of the question. Are we intending to keep people in the same zone for a prolonged period of time? If they want to, the zones that connect to this are very similar in scope in that they have a range of around 50, and they are not necessarily the same range, but similar in range. So if you decided that you got tired of this zone and you wanted to go to the next one, well, guess what? There's a range of 50. So you'll be able to find something to do in that zone over there. You'll be able to find something to do in this zone over here. You'll be able to find something to do into that dungeon, because everything we're building has a scope of around 35 to 50 in terms of the range of what it's meant to support.
So that's pretty cool, because that reminds me of like Greater Fate Arc, when you'd have high level people at the lifts and stuff. So like if someone was level 10 and they're new to the game, and you got someone that's level 50 in the same zone, and level 10 guy OOC,
This goes back to the topic of the week that we had a few weeks back, where somebody asked us, what are you guys doing to focus on bringing old players back to the new zones, or old players back to the zones where new people hang out? And it's like, well, the way we're designing, part of the way we're doing that is by the way we're designing zones. Zones are meant to be able to support a wide array of players in terms of their progression and content. So you'll constantly have mid-range and high range coming back to that. It'll really be hard. I think the only time you'll start to see a really distinct separation is when we start to get into the content that's, say, once you get around 30 to 40, you'll get to the point where the zones are going from like 30 to 80. And so you're not going to see that 1 to 30 in those zones. It's going to be the 30 to 80. So that there will be a transitional gap at some point with some of the higher level zones, but those are going to be more geared towards like the dungeons and the full group encounters. Everything that's meant to support like players of all types, from solo, duos, trios, and so on and so forth, is going to have that range of 1 to 50 or 20 to 60.
But I think that's just really neat, because you got people that have progressed in the game, and you got people that are still learning the game. So I think putting them in that environment in the same zone is a really cool community feature to have. So I don't know, I just think that's really cool, because there is nothing like playing EverQuest 1 and a higher level character, whether it be 10, 15 levels higher than me come help me out, show me the ropes. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I don't know. I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think if the culture is appropriate, I think people are going to remember their roots, just like, you know, in these older, you know, EverQuest, Final Fantasy 11, Dark Age of Camelot, like people like remember their roots, and they go back to their roots to help those people out that are having to go through those same situations that they had to go to when they first started, and it really breeds that MMO culture that we love so much.
Yeah,
That's the theory.
That's pretty
So far,
cool,
it's been
man.
working. We have a pretty good community so far. So
Yeah, I love everybody that I get to hang out with during the test and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up here, guys. We would normally do a voicemail section and a rant. We did get a pretty extensive rant in from Hoye, or Hoye, however you say your name. We are going to hold on to that until after the stream, after Ren's visits next time. So not next stream, but the stream after that, and we will have that rant back, because obviously having a guest on, the streams will be a little bit lengthier than normal. So,
and I just want to point out that is a really good rant that I can relate to. So yeah,
looking forward to it. And if you guys have your own rants that you want to get in, you can give us a call, leave us a voicemail, send us a text. Numbers on the screen now, and be sure to shoot that information over. Ren, thanks so much for coming on again, man. I'm looking forward to next week. So
same
you
time, same place next week.
Yes, sir. If you guys aren't aware, we are going to have Ren on again next week, and we are going to discuss the topic of what it's like to be an indie game, or in this case, an indie MMO developer, and kind of talk about some of the trials and tribulations, you know, some of the processes, some of the, you know, what's positive about being independent and things like that, and with regard to development. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation next week. And if all works out, we're actually going to have one of their developers, providing Ren gives permission. We're going to talk a little bit at some point.
It's up to you guys getting him on the show, like whenever you can make the schedule work.
I got to get with him on this, but I want to talk to him a little bit about what it's like to develop it on the Unity engine, since that's what a lot of independent developers are going on lately. So we're going to hopefully talk about that. So stay tuned in the future for that. It may come in the form of a video. It may come in the form of a stream. Just keep it in the back of your mind. But if you guys want to get in touch with, we're not in touch or whatever, you can find Renfail and Saga of Lucimia on many of the major platforms. But you're doing the streams only on Twitch, right?
Only on Twitch, yeah. And then we port them over to YouTube the day after, usually.
There you go. So you got twitch.tv/ it's Saga of Lucimia, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then
we'll probably do a stream sometime on the 3rd, because that's when the servers kick off for the stage 3.
Gotcha. Just follow it, guys.
Hell
This guy goes on random.
I do, and that's the thing. Like, I don't have a schedule. Like, Sunday was literally, I woke up, Chris and I were like, let's do a quick grocery run because no one's up at 7 o'clock. And then I got back, I was like, you know what? Everyone's under quarantine right now. All these artists are doing like live music sessions and all this other shit. And I was like, I'm just gonna jump on Twitch and, you know, do something for people, and got a good turnout, you know. So it's just like, I'll just do stuff randomly all the time. Or like the stage, the first preview number 1 and preview number 2 completely unplanned. Preview number 3, I think we gave like a 3-day heads up for. And then of course the March 18th one we had like a 2-month build up to. But I like to do random stuff because it keeps people on their toes, and it's like, that's why you should follow, because I'm not just gonna schedule everything. It's to be like, I'm gonna be on a Tuesday afternoon with nothing to do and be like, hop on and be like, woo! If you're not there, you miss out. So
yeah. Well,
That's awesome.
and you guys can sign up for forum accounts over on sagaoflucimia.com. It's a great place to have conversations about the game. And if you guys are interested in, you know, supporting and want to throw some money at Saga, and you get your chance to help test and make the game what it can be, everything that it can be, you just use that link down in the description.
And make sure you use their link. Don't just go to the store and buy it. Make sure to use their referral link, because that way that you guys support Battle Axe Theater as well. So
and we would greatly appreciate that.
That would be so cool.
if you're gonna jump on board with us, definitely, you know, use the URL stuff, because that's what it's there for, ladies and gents.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that, Ren. It's awesome to have
that's why we set it up. Like, it was just a matter of getting to this point where we're ready to turn that system on. So you guys are, I think you guys are the first of the new affiliates who we did any Q&As with. So
Oh, that's awesome, man. And
you got lucky, man.
Hell
all right,
yeah.
guys. As usual, you can find us over on Facebook, Battle Axe Theater, without any dashes or spaces. We're also on Twitter, Battle Axe Theater. And if you want to join in the conversation, the Discord link is linked in the description. You guys have anything else?
Nope. I just want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank
Yeah,
you,
thanks
Ren,
for
for
sticking
doing
in
this,
here.
man. Yeah. This has been a very long stream,
Very
and
enlightening.
major thanks to Saga of Lucimia and Renfail for doing this, and
Absolutely.
it's awesome. So
Sure thing.
Just wanna
Same
say-
time, same place next week, ladies and gentlemen.
yes, sir.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one. See you later.